February 18th City Council meeting. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santi.
Here.
Alderman Glad.
Here.
Alderman McClatchy.
Here.
Alderwoman Bassey. Here. Alderman Davis.
Here.
Alderman Cook.
Here.
Alderwoman Miller.
Here. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I'm going to open up for public comment. Jeff Varda, please state your name and address for public record. If you don't mind hitting that center button. Thank you, sir.
There we go. Jeff Varda, 3400 Biscayne, McHenry, Illinois. Here on Landmark School, the Shell Landmark School. I feel like I'm selling flip-flops to Eskimos sometimes when I come up to talk about public buildings and history. Having said that, I gave you each a packet, and I apologize. I forgot to see if it was stapled before I picked them up when I had the copies made, so I scrambled around and I found some bags from the Farm Bureau. Although, I know it's not a catchy slogan, but you could say that milk made McHenry, if you really knew our history. At one time, McHenry County was the second largest milk-producing county in the United States. I think that's fascinating. Okay. And it really did. We went from subsistence farmers, people that raised stuff for their own living, to producing, to businesses, right? So, anyway, the first part of the packet you have, I just included. Pat Wirtz and Chuck Burntz found these. They are articles from the Plain Dealer from 1894 on Landmark. There's some really interesting material or information on how the community felt at the start, October 1st, 1894, when Landmark was opened. And I'm just doing that and also to say thank you guys for having landmarked it when we brought it before you. But I'm here for a little bit of a different reason today. As you all know, the District 15 has put Landmark up for sale. And it's a short amount of time. I think it's all legal. That's kind of the way it goes. They have a month to put the notice of sale up, and then they start accepting bids. So, but there was a group of us that, without any power, and I would say, hearing the quarters jingle in my pocket, without a lot of money, that are hoping to pursue its sale for public use, that the Landmark School remain a public use facility. Now that's a very large general term. And we put together, if you could turn to this page here, and this is what we're doing. And again, all we can really do, we're hoping to do, is spread the information as far and wide as we can in hopes of helping to find a needle in a haystack. For that one person that says, yes, we would like to see this maintain a public use facility. And I think at heart, I think that's where a lot of people at District 15 are in conversations with the superintendent. But again, he's gotten that dilemma. He has a responsibility also to taxpayers. So that will also play a part. But if you can, this came pretty much based off something we found from Evanston in a sale of one of their historic properties, of how they, knowing that they didn't have full power to determine what was going to happen, at least expressed their desire or what they would like to see happen. And if I know one thing, it's tough to hit a target that isn't visible. And so what we're trying to do is at least make, from our perspective, our target visible. We would like to see it be a public use facility, remain open to the public. Oftentimes when I talk to people about public buildings in our area, it's like, oh my God, there we go again. And I get it. I feel like sometimes you're pushing a boulder up a hill, getting run over and pushing it back up. And this is just probably the optimist in me, but I always see a win-win situation. I understand economic development. I understand maintaining and building on our 3 downtown areas. I understand all of that. And it is frustrating to me, obviously I'm biased, that when I don't see people include history, our history, as part of that, because I think it's attractive to people. There's 5,000 members on the McHenry Remember When Facebook page. And every day you can go on there and there's somebody remembering something about McHenry, okay, that they did here, or, oh, I remember when this was that store, or whatever. It's attractive. Whenever we held farm days out at Colby Peterson Farm, you know, we always drew 3,000 people would come. You know, just for the day, just a day at the farm. We don't have a whole lot out there. 4-H would come, et cetera, et cetera. When we held events, we held several events. Remember McHenry during the winter, and held just like a little lecture time for people to come and remember, just recount their memories of winter in McHenry. And we had 100 people. We packed Hidden Pearl. Having said all of that, if I would just simply like to go over two things. One are our key objectives of this group, which is to preserve historic character, protect the property's distinctive architecture, cultural value, and essential historic elements. You guys have done a lot of that by protecting the exterior through landmarking the exterior. Reintroduce productive use. Return the site to an active role in the community, benefiting local residents and visitors. Enhance community vitality. Showcase the landmark school's historic, cultural, and architectural significance to strengthen McHenry's identity and stimulate economic development. Stimulate economic development. Win-win. I think we can do this. But again, I'm disappointed whenever I see anything mentioned of people that it's not there. It's not in our consciousness. Okay? And I just wish it was in our consciousness. Short story long. I was on the Educational Advisory Committee for the Conservation District, for McHenry County Conservation District. And part of what we would do is we would review the properties, the Conservation District properties. And every single time we started a review, there was this guy that owned horses, okay? And he was a horseback rider. And he would come and say, are you going to put in horse trails? Are you going to put in horse trails? Well, nobody on our advisory committee rode horses. So we'd look around like, well, I don't know. But pretty soon, after persistence, that became a target for us, a visible target to double check to see if that was always feasible at the sites when we replanned them. And that's all I'm asking too, is to consider, to start to put that in your consciousness when you're looking at all of the redevelopment of all of the areas you're trying to do, and particularly all the historic buildings that we have. I don't know how you can, and the last thing I'd like to say is I love this is in bold, we seek visionary investors, okay? It takes a vision, right? It's easy to say, oh, these things won't make money. Well, there's nothing that can happen there. It's an empty, it's an empty hole. We're going to, I don't know. And that's all I would ask is keep an open mind, post it at the target, consider that it has value, see if it can be done, and keep it there. And whether the council wants to, at some point, consider it and say, yeah, we would like to see it be a public use building as well and join us, that would be awesome. And so the last thing, and so you've got what we're sending out. And we're sending this out to the National Trust, to Landmark Illinois, to the Illinois Historic Preservation Office in Illinois, to there's several historic real estate sites for people looking to buy historic purchases. That's all we're doing, okay, is saying this is what we would like to see, trying to help District 15 advertise the sale so more people are aware. And again, hoping that there's that needle in the haystack out there. We'd like you to join us, or at least think about it, or have a discussion on it. And long-term, to think about when you do have discussions on redevelopment in McHenry, that you think about somehow preserving our history. It's going. I don't know how else to say this. Every time I come here, I try and bring you a picture. And I have two last things. This is an article on Highwood and what they did. The city council took responsibility to find a place for their historic society, of which we have one in McHenry. It just doesn't have a physical place for anything. They rent out and do presentations at McHenry Bank. But all of these artifacts and this history is going, it's going quickly. This is something that Highwood did. And I would hope that at some point that you guys would just say, maybe it's time that we spend some time talking about this, or at least thinking about it, and seeing if it should be on our radar or shouldn't be on our radar. That's all I've got, except, and I thought this would be the perfect day for this. This is a picture of what I think is the Borden's Dairy Company cutting ice on McCollum Lake. Okay, because that was the kicker. And you can see the Borden's building in the back. I don't know if this is the dairy processing building or the ice house, but we had 3 ice houses in McHenry. And so, you know, a day like today, people would have been making money out of McCollum Lake instead of ice fishing, which is fine too, I guess. But I'll just pass it around. You can take a look at it. And part of our history. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And thanks for everything you guys do for the city. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. Molly Ostap from the McHenry Chamber of Commerce. Center button. If you could hit the center button, sorry. There you go. Thanks.
All right. I'm Molly Ostap, President of the McHenry Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today to express strong support for the establishment of the proposed TIF districts. It's a mouthful. I think they're a strategic investment in our community's future. I've been speaking with a lot of people lately who have a misconception about what TIF districts are, thinking that they lose money for the taxing bodies. But obviously, that's not the case. If we aren't working to make areas like Main Street attractive to future developers and investors, these places actually will lose value and not only decrease tax revenue, but hurt the entire image of the town that we're working so hard to maintain right now. As you know, a TIF captures new tax growth generated by improvements within the district and then reinvests that directly into critical infrastructure, such as roads, utilities, and redevelopment projects. And I think that's why it looks like so much money is being spent right now on Green Street and Riverside Drive, because the TIF is working. It's doing what it was supposed to do to boost the area where it was created. And we know that it works. When I started in 2016 at the Chamber, if there were more than 2 or 3 people at a time on Green Street, we thought something was going on. Like, what's the occasion? What's going on? Even 3 years ago, Riverside Drive, we were struggling to fill storefronts. And now look at both areas. They're thriving. The TIF sparked development, which encouraged local investment, which brought in business, job, and a stronger economy. And the impact goes beyond the TIF district itself. When people see the community investing in itself, it creates momentum. Businesses want to be here, residents take pride in their town, and property values go up. When the TIF expires, the whole city benefits from a stronger tax base and a more vibrant business district. This isn't just about fixing up a few buildings. It's about setting McHenry up for long-term success. I hope you'll support the TIF and keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Is there anyone else like to make a public comment at this time? All right, moving on to consent agenda items 5A through 5F. Is any council members looking to vote no on any of these items? Alderman Bassey? What item would you like to pull?
Potentially B, please.
Okay. Alderman McClatchy?
Thank you, Mayor. If there's nothing else to be pulled, I will move that we approve the consent agenda.
5A and then 5C through F.
F, right.
Okay. Second, Alderman Santee?
I'll second them.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderman Bassey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Item pulled by Alderwoman Bassey. 5B is yesterday's event, McHenry Area Chamber of Commerce as presented. Accept the McHenry Area Chamber of Commerce's annual Fiesta Days event schedule. B, grant use of parks, police, and public works for various services related to the event, 50% of the actual cost. C, approve special event liquor license. D, approve a placement of temporary advertising signs as presented. And E, approve the fireworks display on Sunday, July 13th, 2025 in conjunction with the event. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm hearing a lot of concerns from the residents that there is just too much drinking at a lot of these city events. I'm okay with two or three of the events having alcohol, but not necessarily all 5. My biggest concern is allowing alcohol consumption from 11 a.m. to 10:15 p.m. on the free family day on Sunday, July 13th. I'm also concerned about serving hard alcohol in a VIP tent in Peterson Park on Friday and Saturday. We should not have hard liquor alcohol at city events, and we should not have exclusive VIP areas at city events. I'm also concerned with some of the end time for these concerts and the noise level. Peterson Park is right next to residential neighborhoods, and the decibel level is too high. I'm already receiving phone calls from residents in that area concerned about the decibel level. So I guess the thing is, can we make any changes to this B?
Molly, would you like to speak? So the fancy cameras can get you and also hear you.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Just a couple of things. I don't know which order they were in. This is the 77th year of the festival. So the music has been going on for a long time. People who've moved into that area know that it's there. We very, very rarely receive any kind of decibel complaints from our festival. I would think that we would get more calls. I think I've received 1 call in the entire time that I've been at the chamber. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure people don't love, that some people might not like it, but obviously the community as a whole likes this festival. It's been going on for 77 years. It's not a city event, it's a chamber event, which means, I don't know, I guess I would ask you, the making it a VIP section, I don't understand what that one is about. So if you could explain what your concern about the VIP one is.
I think exclusivity, if it's a community event, I think it should be open to everyone.
It's a community event, but it's also a fundraiser. So it's actually a fundraising event for the chamber so that we can put on all of the other events and things that we do for the business support and the community.
And every concert has a VIP area component to it. I mean, from every festival to, you have to do that to get the revenues to work.
And then adding the hard liquor this year, we thought we'd test it out. It worked really well during Rise Up, that there weren't any additional problems outside of what you'd typically have at an I'd speak with Chief Burke about it to see if he had any concerns at the time, and he did not have any strong concerns about Rise Up. So that's why we were trying to hope to introduce it both as a potential revenue generator. I mean, basically, we can just try more. Nobody's coming to the event to drink for cheap. I mean, it's just not the reality. And we have been really good luck in the past few years. We don't really have a lot of falling down drunk kind of people. People don't come to get drunk. That's not what the occasion is. So I would encourage you to come to the event so that you would see how it is very, very family friendly. So I think you would change your mind if you were at the event.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Molly. Any other questions, comments regarding 5B? Alderman Miller.
I was just going to echo what Molly said, that this is not a city event, it's a chamber event and has been well orchestrated for many, many, many years. Having served on the chamber board, having served on the Fiesta Days committee, having volunteered a million times and a million hours out there, the festival is well run. It is a well-oiled machine. You have 400 to 500 volunteers that participate in making sure the festival runs well and is taken care of. So I applaud you for going a little to the box this year. I think that kind of follows the cast and barrel night, that you've had such great success with sellouts for the 3 years that you've been doing that. You know, the public is saying we'd like something a little different. So I applaud the chamber for thinking out of the box and going a little different, and providing an opportunity in the middle of summer for not only our residents, but area residents, because our chamber is not just the city of McHenry, it's the McHenry Area Chamber with over 700 members. So this is a great place to live, work, and play, and invite others to do the same. Thank you, Molly.
Thank you, Sue. Alderman Gleb.
Okay. To start, we call it Fiesta Days. It isn't what Fiesta Days used to be. Fiesta Days was a community event for the city of McHenry, okay, for the residents of the city of McHenry. And years ago, it used to be run by all volunteers. Then the chamber took over, I don't know, maybe 24, 25 years ago. I don't remember how exactly long ago it was, but the thing is over the years, it's become, and use your own words, it is a chamber event. It is not the city of McHenry's event anymore like it used to be. And to some extent, I think somehow that the city should look at how we can blend back our support, but our involvement in Fiesta Days a lot more, because again, we need to turn this back into an entire community event. I take offense to VIP treatment and everything else. You may consider it a fundraiser, but you're probably the first one that's just plain out brought it out to the public. Exactly that to the chamber, this is just a fundraiser. This isn't necessarily to build up community spirit. You know, you go back 20, 25, 30 years ago, and you know, you had families that used to come into Fiesta Days. A lot of people would take and they would schedule their vacations so they could be here for Fiesta Days. There'd be people that was the one weekend that they, or week and weekend especially, that they could take and they could come together and meet. I mean, maybe they didn't see each other all year long, but Fiesta Days they would see each other. You'd see families get together and group together at benches and whatnot. And again, the focus was always supposed to be about the community and not just a fundraiser. And unfortunately, it sounds to me like it has more and more bent over as a fundraiser and worried about fundraising than it has as far as being a community event.
Go ahead, Molly.
I just want to speak to that. I think I didn't misspeak. It is absolutely a fundraiser for us, but let me clarify. It's actually, the reason that we do what we do is to support our businesses. We have over 75 businesses that participate every year. We're giving them visibility in the community. That is one of our purposes of the Chamber of Commerce, is giving them visibility, giving them opportunities to not only sponsor, but also to participate, to be out and interact with the community, to give them a good time. And we absolutely think of the community as, like, what can we do to have fun? Not everything has to make money. We do plenty of things at the Chamber that we are not necessarily making money on. And I have teased Wayne all the time, if you want to make a lot of money, don't do a festival, because you don't make a lot of money. But the reality is we have employees that we have to pay, so we have to make money somewhere. And we work really hard to make sure that we aren't passing those dollars on to the community. We have sponsors that cover the big cost of it, but it's why we have areas like the VIP, because some people are willing to spend a little bit more. We don't have a VIP that people are treated differently as they walk in, but they might be able to sit a little closer to the stage, or they might have their drinks delivered to them rather than having to get up and stand in line. To me, it's not an exclusivity of trying to keep people out. I think it's just understanding that people, there are some people that are able to support at different levels, and everybody's having a good time. I think it's still very much a community festival. Thursday night, the park, concert in the park is entirely free. We've got Art and Street Fair weekend, which is entirely free, all of the events. We have the Beach Bash, which is entirely free. So it is very much still a community festival.
That's what I just wanted to jump in and add to that. We do partner, from a Parks Department especially, partner very strongly with the Chamber to do the free beach day. We have all of our Whibbits out that day at the beach. It gives us great exposure for what we do at the beachfront. Sometimes people don't even realize that we have the beach, for them to get out there and be able to take advantage of the inflatables that we have out there, as well as we've moved our big wheel race, which was in the middle of the week, we moved that to Sunday as part of that free Sunday event. So to get the big wheel races kind of showed some popularity last year. It waned for a little bit, but bringing it back on a day when more people are at the beach was to our advantage as well. And then, the coupling of the fireworks show, the Chamber adds additional monies to our fireworks show to give us a better show than we would typically have otherwise. And so it changed the date, but it's us have a better show, and I get some exposure to our community, have more vendors out there for the people that are attending. And then I would say the same thing about the second weekend. I think the parade is something that maybe is overlooked. There are a lot of paid acts that go into a parade. A parade isn't just free and people sign up for it. There's a lot of paid acts that's completely paid for by the Chamber from the revenue of the event. And so I applaud, from the person that organizes it for a long time, applaud the Chamber in finding those, whether it's the Shriners or whether it's bands, the marching bands or whatever that's in that event. That's all funded by the Chamber. And so that's a huge part of our community and make us a community is the Sunday, that the parade, and even the incorporating of street and art fair, of adding Miller Point Park to that now. So now it's not just at Vets Park, but you get people moving throughout the downtown, along the Riverwalk, and at the park. So it is a Chamber event. We've always said it's a Chamber event, but there's a strong partnership between the city and the Chamber to put our best foot forward for the event and to make sure that there's a family feel to it. So I just wanted to add that.
And I'll also say, like, a festival like this, unless you get your on the ground and how much work goes into this, you really don't know, if you don't volunteer and go get involved, you'll never know how much really goes into this. And last year, I guarantee you probably took a loss, at least a big loss, probably, because of the rain. I mean, it's all a risk. Rise Up is on steroids a bit with your $2.5 million, but when it comes to the Chamber, you only have a certain amount of money and a certain amount of budget. But and unless you're really involved, it's those that have concerns or those that don't get involved. So that's all I got to say. Thanks, Molly. Sure, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to the groups and the encouragement of groups. Kay and Molly have always encouraged groups to come to Fiesta Days, and I know that I'll share my age. My high school class of 77 meets out at Fiesta Days every Friday night, every year. And we've been doing that for 20 years now. And last year we had 130 of our classmates out there. Everybody gets out to Peterson Park at 5 o'clock. We pull all the picnic tables over and we just reconnect. There were 4 other groups out there last year. There was a family group. There was like a bridal wedding group because you had the tent still up and they were under the tent. So the Chamber absolutely encourages people to connect out there. It's an amazing event. And I love the direction it's going and certainly support it. And it is a fundraiser. It's the greatest fundraiser that really supports other opportunities throughout the year. When you look at our schedule and you look at Molly's schedule, both of our entities support 12 events a year. And in order to do that, you have to have a main event, a focus, where you have a fundraiser, and you're encouraging people to attend. So, again, as a volunteer, as a participant, I think I would love to see Fiesta Days' name changed, and I've said that my entire time that I was on your board. But, again, I think it's a great opportunity for us, and it's a good partner for McHenry Music Festival. So, thank you.
Any other comments, questions by the council? Go ahead, Alderman Santee.
If there aren't any, I will make a motion to approve consent agenda item 5B, Fiesta Days event, as presented.
Thank you. Second? Alderman Miller?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
No.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Thanks, Molly. Appreciate all you do. Next item on the agenda is 6A, is a Buddy's Pizza liquor license. This is a motion to approve a Class A liquor license to Wade's Wave Incorporated, located at 1138 North Green Street. We do have the potentially new owner, John and his wife, that are here for any questions that you may have. We had met with them last week in regards to this liquor license change. We don't see any issues on our end, so I'm looking for a motion to approve as presented. Alderman Santee?
I will make the motion to approve item 6A, the Buddy Pizza liquor license, to approve the Wade Inc., located at 1138 North Green Street, as presented.
Thank you. Second. Alderman Cook?
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council? Alderman Santee?
Look forward to meeting with the new owners in their beautiful facility. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments by council? Anyone from the public that'd like to make a public comment regarding this item? See none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Congratulations, guys. Good luck. If you need anything from us, let us know, okay? Thank you. You may leave too. You don't have to sit around. All right, just FYI. Next item on the agenda is 6B, B&R Petroleum Liquor License. A motion to approve a Class C liquor license to B&R Petroleum LLC, located at 4713 West Elm Street. Looking for a motion to approve as presented. Alderman Miller?
I'll make the motion to approve a Class C liquor license to B&R Petroleum LLC at 4713 West Elm Street.
Thank you. Second. Alderman Santee?
I will second the motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council? Alderman McClatchy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a transfer, right? They've had a liquor license there before.
Yes.
Yeah. Also in the packet, it shows that they checked off Class B. I don't know if that was a typo, but...
Right, it's a Class C, it's just a package liquor license.
So we're approving a Class C.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments by council? None. Anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment? See none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderman Glad?
Yes.
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Massey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is 6C, Kane Avenue Water Main Replacement. Motion to accept a bid from Gonziano Sewer and Water in the amount of $377,520 and a 10% contingency of $37,752 for the Kane Avenue Water Main Replacement. Director Adams, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So as council may recall, a little over a year ago, on January 17th, 2024, we had a water main failure in the area of Route 31 and Kane Avenue on the west side of Route 31. It was determined that the failure was underneath the Union Pacific rail line, which obviously necessitated a little more of a measured approach to resolving the issue. This was right in the midst of our budget preparation for the current fiscal year. We did not have time to complete engineering prior to submitting our budget for this year, so staff put together what we thought was an accurate reflection of what the project cost may entail, included that in the budget for this year, and then on March 4th of 2024, they entered into an agreement with HR Green to do the engineering for the project. That entailed getting permits from the Union Pacific Rail Line. That took nearly 6 months to get all the necessary permits for it. Once we had the permits, we could go out to bid. The bidding was completed. Union Pacific does have some very specific requirements in their work to construct and operate this crossing, specifically monitoring and construction procedures during the construction process. Due to those considerations, the project did come in about $127,000 above what our initial estimate was. But we feel that in light of all of the conditions that have been imposed on the contractor by the Union Pacific Railroad, it's still a valid offer or a valid proposal, and staff is recommending moving forward with the project.
Thank you, Russ. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve 6C as presented. Alderman McClatchy.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second, Alderman Cook.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion by City Council. Alderman McClatchy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just curious, why so much? I mean, I know sewers break all the time, water breaks all the time. What's made this special?
It's the fact that they have to install a new casing underneath the rail line. Some of the conditions for that are track monitoring by a qualified surveyor during the construction process to make sure that the elevation of the track is not disturbed by any of the construction activities. Specialized flagging and signage in the railroad right-of-way during that portion of the project. And there's also a provision for the contractor that once they begin the boring and jacking process, which is what installs the casing under the track that the water main will be installed inside of, once they start that process, they cannot pause it until they are finished and through to the other side. So if they hit a rock, encounter any sort of difficulty, they have to work continuously. If that means it's 2 days of continuous crews on site working, it will be 2 days of continuous crews on site working. That creates a contingency that the contractors have to account for in their bid proposal. And again, you're working underground. You know, the contractors reflected this in different manners, but at the end of the day,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. It's the cost of working in the railroad right away.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Glab, go ahead.
Yeah. Could you tell me how old the one that collapsed, how old it was? How approximately? I mean, is it 30 years old? Is it 50 years old?
I would
or
say
is it something that's somewhat newer? Or?
It is not newer. I would say it's probably more in the realm of 50, but I don't have the exact age of that.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that these things weren't just collapsing over an 8 or 10 year period, but that's fine.
No.
Okay. The other thing is all right, so we're looking at, what is it, almost $200,000 over with the contingency?
About 100, well, yeah, with the contingency, probably about 160,000.
Yeah. And has anybody had any discussions as far as, okay, this is going over budget, are we cutting back somewhere else, or do we have,
we have
cushion built into the budget?
We have funding available in the Water and Sewer Capital Projects Fund to cover contingencies like this.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Anyone from the public that'd like to make a public comment? See none? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Alderman McClatchy?
Thank you.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bassey?
Yes.
Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Next item on the agenda is 6D, Bearville Road resurfacing. A motion to authorize the mayor to sign and enter into an IGA, subject to the city attorney review for the Bearville Road Surface Transportation Program project. David, do you want to go ahead and?
Yeah, before a motion's made on this, I did review this already a couple weeks ago with Greg, if I remember right. And there is a conflict of interest because I represent both Prairie Grove and the city of McHenry. To avoid that conflict, 2 separate attorneys would have to be hired to review it. I can't even tell you this. I don't think it's necessary, but I will. I think it accurately states the agreement of what work is going to be done by each party and how the payment's going to be allocated and the timing of the payment. So there's not a lot of legal aspects to it, but if you wanted to have this reviewed, I shouldn't be doing it, and I won't do it for Prairie Grove either. But I did look at it. It looks good to me. It's up to you. It's up to you.
That's awesome.
I told Monty it was more important that we move it along and get it before you with that disclaimer as opposed to holding it and playing games with it.
Thank you, David. Russ, go ahead. Is there anything you need to present, or is it?
No, just a brief background. Both Prairie Grove and McHenry applied for STP funding through the McHenry County Council of Mayors for resurfacing of Barrowville Road in the same cycle. The projects were both awarded, and it was at the request of the Council of Mayors that we combine them into one combined project, just to streamline the process. So that's what we did. That's how we've been working forward. Baxter and Woodman is the engineer that was selected for the project, which we obviously work with quite frequently, so we have no concerns about that. And this is just really to formalize how, with Prairie Grove taking the lead on the project, how we will be reimbursing them for the project costs as it progresses.
Thank you, Russ. Appreciate it. Looking for a motion to approve. We asked for a motion and a second first. So, motion to approve. Alderman Santee?
I'll make the motion to approve the Barrowville Road resurfacing project as presented.
Thank you. Second. Alderman Cook for a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion on this item? Alderman Bassi?
Based on what David just told us, do we need to scratch the part that says, subject to city attorney review?
I would suggest that.
That's what I thought.
That would help.
So do we need to do retract the motion and do another?
The person who made the motion and the one seconded.
Agree to that?
Agree that they delete that provision of review by myself.
I will agree.
I will agree.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Alderman Cook?
Ross. How come the city of McHenry is not, how come the city of McHenry is not leading the way rather than Prairie Grove? I mean, was that up to the council of mayors, or, to say, hey, we have the bigger portion. I know it's not up by a whole bunch, but my feelings with Prairie Grove is I don't trust them as far as I could spit into the wind, and I feel a lot better if the city of McHenry had the lead on it rather than Prairie Grove.
I was not involved in the conversations at that time. It's my understanding that Prairie Grove offered to lead the project, and because it was a pretty close to 50-50 split, we agreed to let them take the lead on the project.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but okay.
Any other questions, comments? Alderman Gleb?
Yeah, one of the questions I've got is okay, we've got a criteria as far as how we pave and grind and overlay our roads. Is it basically the exact same process that they're using as well, so that
this is an STP project, so it'll be to IDOT standards.
Okay, so in other words, irregardless of who leads the way, it's still the fact that it will be to certain standards.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we're sharing it here.
Any other questions, comments by council? Anyone from the public that would like to make a public comment? Please state your name and address for public record and by hitting the center as well.
Chris Moore, 2136 Concord Drive in McHenry. So Berryville, this is going all the way from Prairie Grove, 176, right? Or
Berryville would probably go from...
I believe it's going from just south of the Charles Miller intersection to, I believe, right around their village hall in Prairie Grove, but I'm not exactly...
Okay, all the way south of there. Okay.
Yeah.
My concern is, I know it's kind of bad right now, but then you got Route 31 coming up that's going to be demolished. And people cut through Veterans Parkway to Berryville and head north. There's traffic constantly there. You resurface this, it's going to be resurfaced, or the, what's the word I'm looking for, to resurface it again that much earlier. Because there's constantly traffic that's going to cut through there. That's the only concern I have with that. Whenever you do this, because I'm sure this is going to be done before they really start to do 31. So they're gonna cut through there to cut from all the traffic. That's the only concern I have with that.
But also, Russ, with the funding from STP, there's requirements to have it done in a certain time period as well, right?
Yes, we have a timeline that we have to adhere to. I mean, in all likelihood, you're going to have traffic that's diverted onto alternate routes, you know, whether it's Barraville Road, Crystal Lake Road. I mean, the Route 31 project is going to shift traffic.
But there's going to be more traffic on our side, on the McHenry side, than there is on Prairie Grove. That's the way I'm seeing it.
Well, I don't know
even if they divert the traffic, there's going to be more.
I don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case, because the Route 31 project is from 120 to 176. So if people are trying to avoid that, they may find a different route that avoids 31 altogether, not drive from 176 to Vets Parkway just to get off halfway through it, unless they're going somewhere local to that area anyway, in which case they'd probably be driving down Barraville anyway.
People cut through there constantly, so to miss all the traffic up to Bull Valley Road there from 31, they'll cut through Veterans Parkway. I see it all the time. I live there, so I see it all the time. I get tailgated coming down there, so they drive pretty fast. But they will use that more often when the construction starts. So that's just trying to save a little money here if we can, if we somehow not do it right away, you know.
Well, again, we have a timeline that we have to adhere to, and we also risk losing the grant funding if we defer the project. And then how much are we really saving if we're bearing the full cost of the project just so we didn't reduce wear and tear on the new pavement? So I still think in the long run, financially, it's more responsible to move forward with the grant funding we have secured.
But even if we have to do, we're not going to be the full cost, right? Because we're not going to go into Prairie Grove, right? Or Prairie Grove, excuse me.
Well, no, but if we defer the project, we could lose the funding, and then we would have to hope that we could get funding to do it again after Route 31.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mayor?
Go ahead.
If I could make a comment on this. I think a good point that was brought up, and probably not for discussion tonight, but we should be thinking about alternative routes that people will be taking, and what we might possibly be able to do even for short periods of time while the construction is going on, as far as for safety at certain intersections and everything else. And as far as the wear, though, on the roads, I'm going to go back to things I learned from several different public works administrators years back, and that's the fact with our roads. The compression of all the traffic actually brings the oils back up to the roads, which actually does, to some extent, preserve the roads more. Not always is it just the heavy traffic that deteriorates those roads. A lot of times it's, the weather and the plowing and everything else that digs into those roads. And sometimes actually extra traffic does help because it does bring up those oils. I can remember when they did Bull Valley Road, Crystal Lake Road, walk up whatever, just south of Bull Valley, and there was one area there that they had so much oil in there that it would actually puddle up there for a while until they got it taken care of. So anyway, I wanted to just explain that as far as the deterioration of the road, it's not as much as we would think because of the extra traffic.
Thank you. Alderman Cook?
Would there be semis going on Barraville Road or anything else like that? I wouldn't think so with the construction of Route 31.
No, all of the same weight limits would apply to the local roads, and that type of traffic would have to follow, posted IDOT detours for the Route 31 project.
I know they can't go down there now, but, in case they had to get diverted, Thank you.
Alderman Miller?
I think this is a great opportunity to rebuild our road, but the better opportunity is that we can start to prepare people for alternate routes now, very much in advance of all of this construction. So we need to start communicating how you get north and south and east and west, because when you look at 31 Berryville and Crystal Lake Road, to Alderman Glabb's point, we don't have a lot of options. So, everybody has to use 3 paths, north and south, if they don't want to go farther east or west. So not everybody knows what we know with all the cut-throughs and the shortcuts. And I think it would behoove us to start to educate others on alternate routes before it becomes a crisis.
Yeah, and actually, Russ and I communicated a little bit, and I don't want to step on his toes, but I think, once there's some time frames even in place, like right now, we don't know too much, especially when they're even going to start officially. So, which we're looking at, not just, they're not starting this year, you know what I mean? So we got time, but we are communicating about that, and then we're also coming up with a program as far as helping the businesses on Route 31 as well, and how we can support them through this whole mess, to be honest. So we're working on that program as well.
Well, and I think, if you follow social media right now, everybody's abuzz about all the tree trimming. And of course the tree trimming is in advance of the utility replacement, and then the utility replacement has to precede the road. Not everybody out in John Q. Public understands that. So again, I think it is our responsibility to continue to push that information out and to start putting pretty maps together.
And that's,
yeah.
So I sent him an email this morning, or yesterday or whatever, and asked, hey, when we get these maps, when we get information, we need to, but we're still waiting on that. And once we get that, we are ready to go to come out with a plan to make sure we're hitting all these things that you're saying.
I think it's essential for us to do.
I agree. Any other questions, comments by council on this? All right. Any public comment? Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Santee?
Yes.
Alderman Cook?
Yes.
Alderman Glab?
Yes.
Alderman McClatchy?
Yes.
Alderwoman Bassey?
Yes.
Alderman Davis?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, council. Next item on the agenda is a TIF district discussion. I'll go ahead and turn this over to Suzanne, our city administrator, and get us started.
Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for joining us for this sure-to-be riveting conversation about tax increment financing. I'm going to run through just some slides talking a little bit about generalities of TIF. Then I'm going to turn it over to our Economic Development Director, Doug Martin, to talk a little bit about the specific areas under discussion tonight. Doug obviously has been here for an extended period and knows everything there is to know about these areas and the businesses that have located there and the developers that we've spoken with about potential developments that have or have not happened. So with that, we talk a lot about downtown, right? But there are a lot of areas of the city that could also use some additional love and care. We get a lot of questions just as staff. Why does the city of McHenry still have so many vacancies, right? There are a lot of reasons for the issues that we're having in these outlying areas that we're going to be talking about this evening. There are some big box stores that went out and were never replaced. We have lot sizes that are strange in some areas that make it very difficult to redevelop them. We have areas of legacy industrial use where industrial use should not be. It's like thinking about Main Street just as an example. We have some property owners who treat their properties as investments, but not the type of investment that they want to be active with, more like a cash sink or land banking for the future. And then finally, we've had some obvious ups and downs with the economy that nobody has a crystal ball in terms of what's going to happen in the future. And so interest rates have gone up, construction costs have gone up, and so we're looking down the road here at ways to try to help counteract some of that and to encourage development in some of these outlying areas where we had these experiences. Just want to talk a little bit about why a strong commercial base is so important. Obviously, I think it's just common sense, right? You want to see a thriving business community because that helps lift up the rest of the community. It makes a place, to this last bullet, where people want to live, they want to start a business, they want to be in the community when there are thriving areas where they can locate. When the commercial tax base is strong, it helps offset residential property taxes. There's obviously a lot that goes into setting those levies, but commercial growth and commercial taxes really assist residents in the long run. Businesses obviously offer employment opportunities for residents not only in McHenry but surrounding areas, and obviously that's vitally important if you want to have a strong economy. We are looking right now for updated commercial space for small businesses. We talk a lot about our incubator shops, for example, at the Riverwalk, but we're having some issues right now because a lot of those businesses want to grow, they want to expand, they're looking for places in McHenry, and we don't really have space right now that's available for smaller businesses like that who are interested in locating in our community. So redeveloping some of these areas with that in the back of our mind would be really, really helpful, I think, in the long term. And finally, allowing residents to spend tax dollars in their own community, right? We want to provide that opportunity for residents and people in the surrounding areas to work here, dine here, shop here. And so that all kind of goes into this larger picture of making sure that our local economy is healthy and growing. Just a little bit about tax increment financing in a general sense. This is something that it seems complex, right, when we first talk about it. But I think Molly did a really good job earlier of just distilling it down to what it essentially is. It's a geographically focused tool, right? So you have to have, it's a very defined area that this applies to. It's a defined area of growth and it's a defined area of reinvestment. The city administers the TIF, and so we have the ability, when we do have a TIF district, the city council has the ability to decide where those funds ultimately do get allocated back into that TIF area. TIFs are really valuable for economic development and revitalization. As I said, every tax dollar that's generated within that district can be used to reinvest in that specific district for a specific set of uses that generally include public infrastructure and redevelopment and those sorts of things. TIF funding is very valuable just from the city's perspective when it comes to attracting developers. One of the things that we hear over and over again, and Doug can attest to this, when developers are looking to, build something or redevelop something in town is, what can you do to assist me, right? In an ideal world, we talk about this all the time, the city wouldn't have to do that, but that's not the world we live in. Every community around us is offering similar incentives, and when developers look at where they want to locate, it makes a big, big difference to their bottom line. And a lot of these developments that we're talking about, or redevelopments, are very risky because they are in areas where you wouldn't automatically assume you'd want to build your business or start a business. And so when the city has the ability to help support that development, it just is really it changes the conversation for developers and makes things possible that would not otherwise be possible. This is a really, I thought, a very helpful graphic from the Illinois Municipal League, IML. We use them for a lot of our lobbying efforts, and just they have a lot of good information that comes for local governments. They represent every local government in Illinois. And this graphic came from something that I distributed to the city council, as well as it was included in the packet, I believe, which is their TIF sheet. Essentially, it's a fact sheet on TIF. This talks a little bit about, just in generalities, how TIFs work. And I referenced this earlier. So the increased property taxes from new development within the TIF district is collected into a special fund. When the TIF is established, the amount of taxes, right, the amount of property taxes that the other taxing districts are getting, so the school districts, et cetera, that's frozen. So they don't lose the taxes that they're getting now. And when you think about what happens if you don't offer incentives, we talk about whether or not development will happen if there's no TIF incentive available. there's a possibility that 15, 20 years down the line, you're looking at the same exact undeveloped property and there is no additional tax revenue that will come from that. When you are able to redevelop these areas, you can take that funding and reinvest it in the area specifically. So the taxing bodies continue to receive revenue as of the year of establishment. So, for example, if one of these TIFs were to go forward and come into existence in 2026, that would be the base. So the taxing districts would continue to get their 2026 taxes for the next 23 years, and then everything above that would go into this special fund for redevelopment. After 23 years, when the TIF expires, that full increment, all of the taxes that have been generated, kind of on that annual basis going forward in year 24 and beyond, go directly to the taxing district. So if you're a school district and so you'll be getting that 2026 tax for the next 23 years, but 23 years out, you suddenly get all of that increment on an annual basis going forward. And so a lot of the taxing districts look at TIF as a piggy bank, right? Planning, and it helps them to plan their budgets for the future. I referenced earlier, there is a thing called a but-for requirement to establish a TIF. So what that means is essentially there has to be a justification that says that for a specific reason, these properties are not probably going to be redeveloped unless there is some form of incentive available. There is a very specific kind of set of requirements, right? They're listed here. So blighted conditions, conservation conditions, and industrial park conservation conditions. Tonight, we're really talking about the first two, which is blight and conservation. And again, Doug's going to give you a little bit more insight into that. As I said, there are very specific things that you can use TIF monies for. And the City Council is familiar with this because we do have the downtown TIF, which we'll talk about here momentarily. But as I said, there's very specific uses. So public infrastructure is primarily what the city has used TIF funding for in the past. But there's this other list here: administration costs for redevelopment project, property acquisition, renovation, rehab, demolition. So the city has used TIF funds for those things in the past. Job training related to the TIF area. So if there's a business that's opening there, providing on-the-job training for folks to help them get employment there. Financing costs. Again, this is something that we have used in the past to issue bonds and other things. So you can then pay those debt service costs with TIF monies. Studies, surveys, plans. We do that quite a bit. Marketing related to sites within the TIF is possible, and then also professional services like architecture and design, engineering, those types of things. And so the city has used TIF monies for those items in the past as well. Talking about the downtown TIF for just a moment, the TIF was created in 2002. So it's been around for 23 years, but a couple of years ago, the city went back to the taxing districts and to the state to request an extension. So now that TIF will run through 2037. The amount of funding that comes into the TIF on an annual basis fluctuates year to year because it's based on the equalized assessed value as determined by the county. But right now, that number is about $900,000 a year that's available, again, just for that specific subset of projects that can be performed inside of the TIF district itself. As I mentioned, so the TIF increment does vary, right? But as the equalized assessed value, as the EAV of within the TIF area increases, so does that increment, right? And so, we look back at 2016. We were sub $400,000 a year coming into the TIF for those redevelopment projects. Now we're at around $900,000. What happens in the future is all going to be dependent on how much additional development takes place within the TIF, as well as other economic factors, right? So if we for some reason go through another economic downturn, the EAV gets reduced, then this number would go down. But right now it's at about $900,000 on an annual basis. This came from a question from Alderwoman Bassey, just to talk a little bit, as I mentioned, about what we've spent downtown TIF, what the city has spent downtown TIF funding on. This just shows the last 5 years. The City Council received today some additional information that dates back to the beginning of time, all the way back to 2002. So if there's anybody that's interested in seeing that, that's available as well. As you can see, there are some pretty significant projects that were accomplished within that downtown TIF district using TIF monies. That includes phases 1 through 4 of the Riverwalk. So you can see here in the last budget year, this current fiscal year, we completed that project at a cost of $1.25 million, $682 in the previous year for engineering and other costs. But again, these are the types of projects that you can do within your TIF district. And you know, I've only been here about a year. But I think that the people here in this room would agree with me that most of these things would not have been accomplished but for the fact that the TIF is in existence. So it's enabled the city to do some really amazing things with the downtown area, and we would, you know, the staff's recommendation would be to provide the same opportunity to these other areas of town that are in need of investment. So we are talking tonight about kind of 3 general areas. I want to point out, nothing about this is final. We'll talk a little bit later about what the process looks like to actually set up a TIF. This is the very first conversation that we're having with the City Council about this in detail. What you'll see tonight are maps that the staff has kind of put together just based on our initial thoughts on what could potentially be in a TIF. Setting up a TIF is costly and it takes time. So we're talking a process of months to a year, 6 months to a year to get this done and set up if the City Council opts to move forward. Not only that, but there's a lot of time and effort that goes into assessing each and every one of these parcels to make sure that they are the right fit for a TIF, that they're eligible, number one, and number two, that it makes financial sense. And so, you know, again, this is a discussion, and we just want to, you know, have the talk through what this could potentially look like and get some feedback from the City Council. One of our challenges, obviously, you know, as the staff, is we're trying right now to put together our budget, our annual budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And so if there are going to be potentially consulting costs or other things that we need to account for in that budget, we would just like to know that now so that we can kind of start getting an idea of what this could potentially cost us just in terms of consulting and legal. Because there are a lot of very specialized things about setting up a TIF district that the staff here does not have the expertise to do. Again, we're looking at 3 generalized areas. We've got up north, we've got Richmond Road, and again, Doug will go into detail on each of these. This is the area around the old Kmart building and you know, some other items there. We've got West Route 120. You'll be able to see in the blow-up maps here momentarily. There's a lot of very small parcels there that are very challenging for redevelopment. And then we've got this Main Street, we're calling it the monster TIF at the staff level, just because it does seem like it stretches a long, long way, right? But it starts up north on Main Street, and then it heads down the 31 corridor and captures some other things down here at the bottom that we'll talk about a little bit. One of the questions that came up today that I think is just important to address up front is these maps do include a lot of city-owned properties within the suggested TIF areas. That includes parks, it includes the city hall. The reason, from my understanding, just based on conversations that I've had with the staff, the reason that we would include those areas is for future flexibility. It's not because there's any specific plan to develop any of those properties right now. But when you're setting up the TIF, that is your chance. You have one chance to get it right. And so when you grab those properties and make sure that they're included in the TIF, nothing comes off the tax rolls because right now they're not taxable properties, generally speaking. But it gives City Council now or a future City Council 23 years from now the ability to say, we have some available money in the TIF fund, and for example, City Hall needs a new roof, and how are we going to pay for that, right? And so the idea in including those properties is just to provide flexibility and options. There's no plans for development specifically on any of those properties. So I just wanted to say that up front. All right. The TIF creation process, as I mentioned, requires time and financial investment. More than likely, we would need both a TIF consultant and a TIF attorney. Again, this very specialized work. It's very legal work, and you have to make sure that you get it right. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that the city council understands and the community understands what this process would potentially look like and why we're talking about this now. So first things first, there is a feasibility study that has to be done on each and every one of the parcels. As I mentioned before, they all have to meet a certain standard and they all have to make sense and be included in the TIF for a specific reason. Those recommendations then, so that we would have to hire a consultant. The consultant would go out, conduct this study, and then come back and present recommendations to the city council. The city council would provide feedback on that, either approve or not approve that. Then if the feasibility study is accepted, then we would move forward to the formation kind of step here of the specific districts. Again, the city council would vote on that. Then there would have to be a redevelopment plan and a TIF budget, both prepared. There are public notices, there are legal requirements, there are legal notices, so the community and the city council would have plenty of opportunities, kind of as this moved forward, to comment or provide, feedback and then make changes if necessary. There's also a joint review board that has to be pulled together with all of the taxing bodies, so that includes all the school districts, et cetera, where they have to, kind of sign off. There's public hearings, and then at the end of all of this, the ordinance would come before the city council for approval. So, as I mentioned, this is it's an extended process. It takes 6 months at a minimum, but probably longer than that. And so, as we're just having this conversation, I think it's important for the city council to understand what that could potentially look like, as well as why we're doing this now, because we want to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately for the upcoming fiscal year. All right. With that, before we dive in, are there any specific questions about anything I just said that we want to talk about? And obviously, we'll provide that opportunity later too.
Just real quickly, so you just said in your last statement it would come back for final approval of the council. Is there any approvals that have to go through the state of Illinois?
It is my understanding that to set up a TIF, the answer is no. When the extension went through, that does require state approvals. But in order to set one up, and I'm looking at Monty because he's one of our only folks who's been through this.
That's true.
Yeah, I do not believe that there's any state requirement to approve a TIF when it's initially set up.
Unless the laws have changed. When we created the first one, we had to get it approved downstate.
Yeah, and obviously this is something that we will certainly gain a better understanding of if the city council opts to move forward with these conversations.
No other questions?
Jeff,
all right.
The question.
Who? Jeff, go ahead. You want to come up here real quick and?
Suzanne, you mentioned property acquisition by who as specific?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, and the way that the city has used this before, is to purchase properties to hold for development. So, for example, TIF funding, I believe, was used to purchase a parking lot that is currently on Green Street.
So, property acquisition by the city?
I believe so.
Not individual?
They could, like a developer could say, like if a developer is asking for help, right? The developer could say, I need to acquire this property, and that's one of the things they are eligible for. That doesn't mean they get it. The council
They can ask for an
decides.
incentive agreement.
Yeah, the council decides what the developer gets, but that's something they could be eligible for as well. I don't know if that's a...
Hypothetically, I come back and say, listen, I'd like a landmark school,
Can you turn your mic on real quick so that way?
So, I was saying, hypothetically, I could come and say I want to buy Landmark School and access...
That's in our current TIF district, and that would be an eligible cost if the council...
Okay. And repairs, correct? And it also said repairs, right? I'm just trying to understand what it said, which were, so they could, if... Yeah.
Well, but to be clear, so this is the list of allowable uses, right?
I'm going to go sit down. That's all I had to say.
This is the list of allowable uses, but then there's also, what the city council opts to approve. In the past, there has been a very limited kind of universe of things that they have paid for with TIF dollars to assist with development. Generally speaking, in the past, and Bill can back me on this, I believe, most of the costs that have gone into those incentive agreements have been related to public infrastructure that's required for the development to move forward.
That's correct. Up to this point, every TIF incentive that we've gone forward with has had some public component to it, whether it's extension of a sewer main, sidewalks, building of the Riverwalk adjacent to a property, parking, public parking. There's been some public component to every project that we move forward with at this point.
Nothing has been set to like do a new roof or,
No.
nothing like that.
Correct.
Just FYI.
No, yes.
Not at this point. Okay. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Director Martin to run through these specific areas, talk a little bit about why these properties were included in the TIF, and kind of what the plan would be moving forward.
Thank you, Administrator Ostrowski. So the first area we're going to talk about is the Richmond Road area, the area north and south of Macomb Lake Road and south of Blake Boulevard, which consists primarily of, there's 4 main shopping centers here. The old Walmart Center, which is now U-Haul, McHenry Commons Shopping Center to the east of 31, it's to the north of Macomb Lake Road, northeast corner. In the southeast corner, McHenry Plaza, and the southwest corner of Richmond Road and Macomb Lake Road is McHenry Grounds Shopping Center. And all these centers are, they were constructed in the 80s and the 90s. They've all taken some wear and tear. Walmart, as many will recall, I think Walmart vacated and moved to Johnsburg in 2010. And it was vacant for 6 years until U-Haul came. But it's still, do we know that storage is going to be the use for decades? I don't know that. McHenry Commons is a big one on this list. McHenry Commons Shopping Center was constructed in the late 80s. Between McHenry Commons Shopping Center and McHenry Plaza Shopping Center to the south, there's 150,000 square feet of vacant square footage right now. So there's a lot of vacant space up there right now. McHenry Commons is split into 2 owners. It's split right at the building line of the former Kmart building and Sears Grand. I'll refer to it as the former Kmart building, just so I won't confuse anybody. So right at that building line is split between owners. The south half is owned by BET Investments, the north half is owned by First Midwest Bank Group. And the north half is doing a lot better than the south half. So the south half has been vacant for about 13 years. In fact, Sears Holdings announced it was closing Sears Grand approximately 13 years ago this month. And I'll get into the vacant building incentive program in a little bit, but that was one of the things we tried to do to try to revitalize this shopping center and other vacant buildings within the city. But this shopping center has been, the building's become sort of an eyesore. It is an eyesore. It's become obsolete. I was talking to a shopping center owner today. For retailers, in order to make this work, they would have to charge, if somebody went into this building, they would need to charge a rent of $25 to $30 a square foot to make numbers work. And with construction costs being so high, there's no way to feasibly do that. And retailers just don't want to be in the building. In order to split the building up, the bathroom's located on one end of the building, and you cut people off from the bathroom, so you have to put a hallway in the back. So there's a lot of things wrong with the building. The center to the south is not as in bad of shape, but it still needs a lot of work. So there's a lot of problems with this center. So this is the Richmond Road TIF, and there's, I'll go on to the next slide, please. Okay, so.
Which way? That way?
No, I'm sorry, I'm doing it on mine, and I'm doing. Okay, so I already talked a lot about this. So, development challenges, out-of-town disinvested property owners. Property owners using the buildings as a write-off have no incentive to sell or lease. We've tried to work with BET Investments in the past. The mayor has reached out to them personally. I've tried to reach out to them. They just don't move. They're set on their laurels. They're happy to use it as a write-off. The only type of building sees an opportunity is when Spirit Halloween's in town, or they did work with us with the COVID vaccination center. I'll give them credit for that. The pricing of the building's not in line with the market. The last time I was quoted on a price, I think was in 2021. I think they said they wanted $4 million for it. It's $40 a square foot. Now, the building itself is 89,000 square feet, but if you add up all the square footage of all the space from the former Kmart building to the space to the north of it, it's 100,000 square feet approximately. And the only part that's occupied is Hassel's Mattress, which is about 4,200 square feet. Lack of maintenance, emotional ties to property, lack of resources by property owner. Okay, next slide, please.
I'd like to say something real quick about this property before we move on. So this property has been under contract twice in the last 4 years. Both times through due diligence periods, they have backed out quickly because of the cost of the property, but also the cost to do anything to this building. So just FYI, there's been interest in coming to McHenry by box stores, but it just, the numbers do not work. So I just wanted to... Yeah,
and that happens as recent as last year. They did all their due diligence and then just backed out. One of the reasons is the grade on this property. Going down McCollum Lake Road or up, whichever way you want to look at it, going to the north, the retailers don't find that grade, it's not good enough. It blocks the view from Richmond Road. So that's not very conducive to good retail on this property. So why consider TIF on this property, on these properties up here? And I'm not just concentrating on McHenry Commons. I want to concentrate on all the properties up here. So this area is blighted. It has vacant and substandard buildings. They're economic, functional, and physically obsolete properties. McHenry Plaza, same thing. The extra space storage was redeveloped. It's a storage facility, but it was redeveloped into a storage facility, and it's a nice building. The property is maintained. The buildings to the south of it are owned by a different property owner, again, an out-of-town property owner. The building to the north is extra space storage is a different property owner, so two different property owners, maintained differently, taken care of differently. They fall into disrepair. The shopping centers were constructed in the 80s and 90s. They need major improvements. Even McHenry Ground Shopping Center, haven't seen a lot of action on that one either. And there's that again is constructed again in the 80s and 90s. Now, I will say that the centers to the north of Blake Boulevard are doing fairly well. They're in that 97 to 100% occupancy range. Now, they were constructed in the 90s and the early 2000s, and they're doing much better. So there's a vast difference between those centers and these centers down here. There is some vacant land to the west on McComb Lake Road, also included within this proposed TIF, as well as some vacant land to the north. Steak and Shakes included, as well as a couple other properties north of the U-Haul site as well. But these shopping centers comprise the majority of the proposed TIF. As I said, reuse division of the big box building is extremely costly. You have to think about redevelopment. It has to be, you have to do a redevelopment plan. Is the redevelopment desirable to align with the city's comprehensive plan? The McHenry Commons site was looked at during the comprehensive planning process, and it looks at a mixed-use concept with retail and missing middle housing. So not just retail. For all intents and purposes, the former Kmart building is a tear down, and it really can't be reused, and that's really expensive. When I talked to a shopping center owner today, the same one, he said it's good that the city's considering other uses on that site because the building is in such bad shape. Evolving retail market. A lot of people want entertainment type uses. This building's not conducive for that. The ceilings are not that high. So that's another thing that, it just lacks. As the mayor suggested, that developers' passive opportunities due to the lack of incentives. When everyone calls me, they talk about development, and then they ask about what does the city have to offer a developer. I don't think developers are, greedy. I think it's just the way the reality is today. To make their numbers work, they have to ask for incentives. Two things: construction costs and interest rates, and it has to do with vacant, not only properties with buildings on them, but vacant land. And it's just been holding things up, and people they can't make projects work, and it's very frustrating and it's very difficult to deal with. But that's the reality of the challenges we have to deal with. We go to the next slide. So I'm going to address the vacant building incentive program real quick, and this, before I go on to the West 120. This would probably also address the West Route 120 Corridor Enhancement Initiative as well, even though those two programs are slightly different. Developers want as much certainty as they can get. Time is money, and developers want to reduce their risk as much as they can. That being said, the Vacant Building Incentive Program is a decent concept, similar to a TIF, but not as great an economic incentive as a TIF, and does not accomplish those three developer goals. With the vacant building program, if your building was vacant for 3 years, you could potentially get a property tax abatement for 5 years from the date of the issuance of a CO, Certificate of Occupancy, from more than one taxing body on the increase in property taxes after redevelopment. While I went to the other taxing bodies to sell the program, this was in 2022, and initially received decent support, I only received 2 letters of written support for the actual program. If a proposal comes forward, I need to take it to each taxing body under this program, and it is subject to a presentation by the developer in front of each taxing body. Now, with 9 to 11 taxing bodies and then committee and board meetings, this takes time. And for a 5-year abatement, that was stipulated in the program and also in the letters of support from the 2 taxing bodies. That's just the way the program was structured. Whereas with a TIF, all the legwork and due diligence with other taxing bodies is for the most part done up front on a project-to-project basis. It's a more well-known, widely used economic incentive tool, and it eliminates a lot of developer uncertainty, saves a lot of time, and it reduces the risk tremendously as long as everything complies with the TIF Act and the community's redevelopment plan and goals. It's more of a package tool deal, assuming you qualify for TIF assistance. I'll now go on to the West Route 120 TIF, proposed TIF, I should say. So on West Route 120, you see here, it includes the area from Ringwood Road and 120, just a little bit west of there, to 120 and Front Street, and just a little bit east of there. And there's a lot of, you can go to the next slide, a lot of development challenges along this property, along this stretch of land, I should say. Former residential lots, now zoned commercial, are difficult to develop because they're smaller with a minimum lot size, smaller than minimum lot size. CRIP solutions required to maximize functionality. You got a lot of houses that were built along this stretch of road. It used to be, a smaller road. When all of you recall the construction in, I think, 2004 or somewhere around there of Route 120 and how it affected the businesses. And those lots are small lots with homes, many of them, and they're zoned commercial. You need to be creative to fit all your utilities infrastructure on those lots. They're undersized lots. They need to be aggregated and potentially converted to multi-family or townhome-style development. When I say that predicated on a mixed-use platform outlined in the comp plan, which calls for commercial on the first floor and missing middle housing on the second floor. And that's only for some of the lots where you can't do commercial on the first floor, or totally commercial, because some of the lots just aren't deep enough. So some of them are conducive for mixed-use lots. So some of them could be conducive to the mixed-use format.
Yeah, I keep flipping back to this because I think it's just really important when we are talking about what we're talking about here. If you look at the lots that are lining Elm Street there along 120, they're so small. They look like I don't even know. What's that?
Regular home lots.
Yeah, they were at one point, residential lots, right? And so now there's a lot of commercial businesses that are located in there. And, I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier still holds true here, right? One of the city's primary interests is, or should be, making sure that we have small commercial spaces available for local businesses and smaller businesses and the folks coming out of our incubators. And so we have some ability here, just based on the way that these lots are structured, potentially to create some of those opportunities, in the future.
And we do have businesses out here, and they do need locations. It's just not maybe the best location for pedestrian-oriented businesses as of now. There could be streetscape improvements out here, sidewalks, amenities, landscaping type things. So there are development challenges. This proposed TIF goes to the east, includes McHenry Marketplace, which is another center constructed in the 70s. Again, it's like one of the ones on Richmond Road. It's outdated, kind of, some of the tenants in there are kind of, on the bubble. It includes the former or current Brake Parts building, and the area up on Oak and Orleans, the industrial condos, and some lots on all the way up to the north that have some environmental challenges by the creek up there, as well as to the east of Oak Drive, Boone Creek Plaza with the Jewel, and it also includes south of 120 with some of the restaurants in that one building, 4507 West Elm, that's been vacant and just sitting there. And a lot of the restaurants are older, fast food restaurants. A lot of national chains are older, and a lot of them had some issues. And there are some redevelopment opportunities there as well. And we try to implement a program here as well called the West Route 120 Corridor Enhancement Initiative from Meadow Lane to Ringwood Road along 120. I think that was in 2012. But again, that really had no substance to it. It had no, it was a good program, but it really it didn't put all the onus on the property owner to make their incentive on them. And it just, at the time, there wasn't a lot happening out there. And I should mention, the only people who took advantage of it at the time were Sunnyside. When the Jeep dealer came in, they got a sales tax rebate. And we've seen the gas station go up out there, which is great. And with the Stonewater development going up in Wonder Lake, all those people are coming down this way to shop. So that's another thing that's going to hopefully help this area as well. So we talked about, I think we can go past this. I talked about a lot of this. Major shopping centers. Some uses are not compatible with the surrounding area. Older commercial uses east and west of Meadow Lane, right for redevelopment. When I say that, I know John Graham has some property. He has the Dunkin' Donuts property, but he also has a property to the east of there, the gas station property, and the building he knocked down. That's, I know he's looking to redevelop that. So there's uses that are potentially could be redeveloped there.
Not a gas station, by the way.
I'm sorry?
Not a gas station. He's not looking down on a gas station. I'm just clarifying that.
There's some, as I mentioned, some lots of environmental challenge in the city center business park on Oak Drive. And I mentioned the West Route 120 Corridor Enhancement Initiative. Now, this is the the mega proposed TIF, or the Main Street area, Boone Creek to Bull Valley Road. So this focuses on, I really want to focus on Main Street a lot, and then I'll be quick. And then it goes down Front Street, down to Bull Valley and Route 31, and kind of stops at Bull Valley Road, except for the Stoddy property, which is south of Bull Valley Road and east of the tracks. So it encompasses the area, large area of Pacini's property, which is west of 31, east of the railroad tracks, south of Lillian, north of the Bull Valley Road, and north of the where that right-of-way is, and south of the right-of-way. Next slide, please. So development challenges are along here. There's a lot of vacant land has gone undeveloped, many due to financial gaps in financing. I've had hotels look here. Again, hotels are very difficult to develop. They all need financing. They all need incentives. And you have to do a hotel study first, which we've done. And we're trying to be proactive in that sense. But they still need incentives.
Doug, can you talk a little bit about what happened with the hotel that's under construction in Woodstock?
Sure. This was on Richmond Road, and Cobblestone Hotel was looking at McKenna Commons on North Richmond Road, and they were going to take down the building and put a hotel there. And they ideally wanted a TIF district. And we said we had this vacant building incentive program, and they said, "What's that?" And I explained it to them, and I said it's kind of like a mini TIF, but they said they wanted a TIF, and they couldn't make it work without a TIF, and so they just left town. And then they actually came down and looked down here on South Front Street, and they looked at where the new McDonald's is constructed on Park Place. They looked in that area, but again, they couldn't make it work without a TIF. So that hotel looked at two different locations, but they just can't make it work without a TIF.
And therefore, they went to Woodstock.
And they went to Woodstock, and they're building there. And I think it's on city-owned property. I believe so.
And this is why we have this picture up here also, like the old McDonald's. There's a lot of restrictions, and there's a lot of properties that have restrictions in place, like a Walmart or McDonald's that has restrictions, so you can't sell specific food or drinks or whatever the case may be out of the McDonald's building, which is why it's vacant, which we're working with the owner to develop it. But just keep that in mind, there's a lot of buildings that have restrictions that, otherwise it would have been developed already. It's just unfortunate, but those types of businesses put tight restrictions on their sites.
And I'll just piggyback on that. And the McDonald's, I know, is a 20-year restriction, a covenant, if you will, on the property. Basically, no food or drink, anything that competes remotely with McDonald's. And the McDonald's itself that was constructed at Park Place has a restriction on the rest of their property, or the owner's property, that restricts that property to the same kind of thing. So it not only restricts the old property, but it restricts property around its new property.
We also did fight to get that restriction removed, and that was not successful, but we tried.
So it's tough. Legacy Industrial Use is located downtown. Main Street is, it goes back to our history. Jeff's still here. So there's a lot of industrial uses located downtown that probably shouldn't be downtown, but that's just the way downtowns develop. With the upcoming Route 31 construction, it's going to have a major impact on Main Street. Main Street wasn't contiguous to the Riverside Green Street area TIF, so it wasn't included. It's just taken a lot of challenges, a lot of hits in the past. And I know Bill can speak better to this than I can. The Riverwalk was going to include it and try to make a physical link with the pedestrian bridge over Boone Creek through Rotary Park.
To tie back into Main Street?
Yeah.
That's the idea, is to bring that, sorry. To really find the best way to tie back into Main Street. It's always been a challenge of where can we make that connection. And so we looked at how can we bring that the historic bridge back and use that as maybe a path through where that retention pond is. Now we're only a block away. If we can get to Rotary Park, which is owned on 3rd and Waukegan, now we're only a block away from Main Street and in a historic district right there. So it creates a potential connection to Main Street through the Riverwalk.
Thanks, Bill. And then so why, next slide. Why consider to all wrap this up. So blighted properties, vacant, dilapidated buildings. Administrator Ostrowski talked about blighted properties and conservation areas. Conservation areas, if you have properties that 50% of the properties are 35 years or older, you can be considered a TIF district. There's a lot of that on the proposed West Route 120 corridor. There's some of that on the South Front Street. There's some older properties there as well. It's a lot of dilapidated buildings, manufacturing compatible uses, not only on Main Street, but also on the Bull Valley corridor. There's a hodgepodge of manufacturing uses north of Bull Valley Road, around the 4500 block. They're just all scattered unsubdivided industrial properties. There's a lot of redevelopment opportunities along the Front Street corridor. Several of the buildings were constructed in the 50s. There's a few older single-family residential properties intermixed. There's a few opportunities with city-owned properties. And then there's some properties with environmental challenges east and west, and Front Street north of Bull Valley Road as well. Next slide, please. So I apologize for my voice, and bear with me. Thank you.
All right, so that is the entirety of staff's presentation for the evening. Obviously, now it's up to the City Council to discuss and provide direction. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, staff. All right, we'll open it up for discussion by City Council. Anyone want to start us off in discussing these TIF areas? Alderman Gleb?
Yeah, I was going to state that, number one, there's so much discussion about what can be done with the TIF, but there hasn't been any discussion as far as how it affects the taxpayers. This isn't free money. You know, we've tried to hold the line on our levies every year, and then we added in taxes on utilities and everything, which was fine because at least that was controllable type expenses, and property taxes aren't, at least not by the property owners. If we take and we create these TIFs, especially for what you're talking about here, that could be some dollars that are starting to show up on people's property taxes. You know, Caroline, maybe you could get to the council, and I don't know how long it would take to try to figure out and compute, but it'd be interesting what the taxes would be as far as an impact on a $300,000 house for, let's say, every $1 million worth of EAV that we'd have out there in a TIF area. You know, what are the impacts to our homeowners? And I think that's one of the things we need to look at. And I'll be honest with you, I think it'd be a hard sell as far as just creating TIF districts without a total concept in mind of what we would want within each district. You know, I've heard comments as far as down 120 as far as townhouses and apartments, and that isn't what we need down there. What we need is this commercial, the small commercials, like our administrator says, as far as smaller smaller businesses that would be more, instead of having people from Lakeland Park or further west like that, having to go all the way down, every other day or every day, all the way down 31, they could have some local businesses that they can shop at over there. So, like I said, I think to some extent, I think we need to realize that we are impacting our taxpayers on every tip that we would create. I mean, another thing that bothered me was I take a look at the chart that the IML sent, and they didn't really spell it out very well, and maybe that wasn't the intent, but all taxes go to the school, city, and county, etc. When your tip's over, those are not extra taxes. You don't get extra taxes when you do away with a tip. Basically, what the tip does is it affects the amount of people that are paying into your levies for every taxing dollar. And so you are affecting everybody's taxes, property taxes, because you are shrinking the amount of people that are paying what the schools or any other taxing bodies are appropriating. And that's how it's affecting the property owners. So, where this says all taxes go to schools, city council, or city, county, et cetera, it isn't additional taxes that are being generated. It is additional EAV to where fewer dollars per person have to be spent down in the long run. So, like I said, I think to some extent, some of these charts, you look at it and it looks like a gravy train, but it really isn't. And the thing is again, it isn't free money. It's not money that's coming from the state as far as grants or anything else. It's from our taxpayers. And I think it would be definitely horrible for us to take and create districts unless we know and we have a good sight of what we're going to do in those areas, and everybody's agreeable on it. And another thing I want to also bring up is the fact that we keep talking about, well, this is a 23-year tip, and then it can be expanded out to that. It can also be cut tomorrow. If the council decides that they don't want a tip anymore, they can just stop it right away. So, needless to say, you wouldn't stop it tomorrow because you'd want to make sure your dollars are amount. But I think all these things need to be brought out to everybody. I think council members need to know all the different options on a tip and not just what sounds the best. And I'll be honest with you, I'd be appalled that we'd have all these city properties that are included in the tip. Why would we have, let's say, bus board? They're not by any means part of an area that's hurting, and they shouldn't be part of the tip.
That's part of this discussion too, if that's the case. And it's got to meet that criteria as well. So, these are just discussions. This is not us saying, hey, we want all these properties in there, or staff wants all these properties in there. This is just a discussion for that reason.
Well, we're right, and that's
because that property will
it's not a proposal. This is what we're looking at, and so this is the time for council to make their comments before staff works forward, with a proposal. Sure. They should have some idea what our reservations are. So, with that, I'll leave it for other council members at this time.
You want to follow up on anything? All right, so I would also like to explain the whole concept of mixed use. That is also a comp plan that was just approved unanimously by the city council just a month ago, 2 months ago. That was part of the comp plan, was some mixed use on, Route 120 and 31 corridors Commerce. So just FYI, that was approved by City Council, so that's why the staff mentioning that. So I just want to make that clear that we're not trying to bring in all these big buildings. That was part of the comp plan and approved by City Council unanimously. So just wanted to emphasize that. Go ahead. Alderman Bassey, go ahead.
I just wanted to add on to what Alderman Glab was saying. The taxing bodies, when you do set up a TIF, the taxing bodies do receive their full ask. And I think that's what Alderman Glab was saying, that they are still going to get their full ask. Yes, the TIF area is frozen, their EVA is in fact frozen, so they will only pay that particular dollar amount, whatever, and I'm going to make this up, but let's say their tax liability is $100,000. And again, I'm just making this up. 80% of that $100,000 is going to go to the school and then disperse to everyone else. And as it grows, that's your base. But then as it grows, yes, all of that TIF area, they are still liable for an increase in their property tax. But that difference is going to go into the TIF fund. So what will happen is, and I think this is what Alderman Glab was trying to say, was that the taxpayers are going to be liable for whatever that difference is that the school is asking for, and I'm just saying the school, but all the tax bodies are asking for at an increased level. The frozen section is only going to have a liability of $100,000 for the full 23 years. So I just wanted to let everyone know that the taxing bodies are still going to get 100% of whatever their ask is.
So just so I'm clear, so we're talking about, so for example, you're using the school district, right? So if they increase their levy by 5% on an annual basis, that's the differential that you're talking about there?
Well, what will happen? Do you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
The question was what again?
I'm just trying to get clarity on where she's going.
You said...
So I'm just trying to get clarity in terms of what Alderwoman is.
Well, I think what she's stating more than anything else, because I've had a discussion with her on this a couple different times about TIFs, and I guess more than anything else is the fact that, okay, if the school levies for, say, for every $100,000 they levy, if we wind up taking and having, let's just say 100 people that were paying it, and then all of a sudden you're taking a area out of the TIF, now all that additional revenue does not build up to help pay for that $100,000. Now everybody else has got to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Yep.
You understand what I'm saying on that?
I don't, but...
So I think we're mixing apples and oranges to try to make a point here. Basic taxation is every tax district establishes their budget, and they divide the budget by the EAB to establish a tax rate. So the only thing a TIF district is doing is freezing the EAV on the establishment of the district. So, for example, if a taxing body needs $100 and there's $100 of EAV, it is a rate of 1.0, because that's what they need to create. So all a TIF district is doing is freezing the EAV, so each taxing body is going to have to look at their budget against the EAV and apply a tax rate. Certain taxing bodies have limitations on what they can expand on an annual basis. So by the application of a TIF district, we are just freezing the EAV to that tax body, and any revenue generated for the additional value goes back into the TIF. So you're bifurcating the money, basically. So that the spreading of the cost to additional people is oranges to apples. So you have to go back to the understanding of taxation and budget appropriation against EAV equals tax rate. I don't know that I added any clarity looking at the faces looking at me. Sorry.
I feel like people on the staff who are smarter about TIFs than I am, so Bill, you look like you have something to say.
I think what it sounds like the assumption is being made is that the overall city EAV is increasing annually, and it typically does as development happens. I think we'd all agree with typically the EAV is going to go up. And in a TIF area, once those taxes are locked, that of what that taxing body is receiving, and correct me if I think this is where you're going with it, that the new TIF area or existing TIF area is locked, but the EAV for the whole city continues to ask. The school district, in this case, what we're talking about, is going to ask for more money from the overall EAV increase. But the TIF area is locked, and so what I think you're saying is that the rest of the residents will have to then pay the difference because the EAV has escalated. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. Okay, that's right. I don't know that to be true. From what we've seen with our existing TIF, I would have to do a little more research into that. But just to clarify it, I wanted to make sure that that's exactly what you're trying to say. When the EAV goes up in a TIF, that's exactly what we want to happen. That's why we put the TIF in place, is to create the development. And in the end, everybody does get more because those taxes are locked for 23 years or until it's ended. And in the meantime, as it continues to escalate normally, that money goes back into that district, into whatever we choose, you choose to give to a developer that's asking for development money. And at the end, whenever it's ended, we all get that portion. That same percentage, 45% for the schools or 7%, less than 7% for us, we get that portion of the new EAV that was created through development, which will gain exponentially because we were able to invest in that area. Does that help? Not help?
I think you just confused everybody even more, Bill.
Well, that would be the first time. But I think your point of the rest of the residents will have to pick up the EAV, I think that was the main point that you were trying to make, that
Correct.
I think that there was a lot of confusion on. Again, I would have to do a little bit of research into that because I don't feel that to be the case, but I can't say that definitively sitting right here.
I think it's an important fact that we should know that before we ever move forward with another TIF.
Mm-hmm.
How does it affect the residents, as far as the taxes?
And you're talking specifically about the residents outside of the TIF district?
Correct. Okay. Yes.
So
well,
I think that's the point.
It actually it would affect everybody because everybody's still paying it. It's just the fact that we don't give out, or we collect the difference in the EAV in the TIF area. But the people that are in the TIF area still are paying their fair share of the taxes. Right.
Alderman Miller?
So I think the point of the discussion is to give staff some direction if we're even going to consider TIF districts so that they can secure consultants and attorneys to do all this homework and to give us advice on how to proceed. Because not every property, per the presentation, is going to meet the criteria, the threshold of can we apply a TIF? And clearly we've done our best, thank you, Bill, for what we do have, but when we're going to take a project on like this, I think we need to bring in specific specialists to help us. Having said that, I'm in great support of doing that and looking at these three areas, because to Director Martin's point, these are the three areas that we have that require the application of incentives. Otherwise, the Kmart building is going to remain what it is. West 120 is going to continue to look like what it is. And we don't know what South 31 is going to look like. You know, we have a lot of vacant property there. To Director Martin's point, people aren't building there because their cost is too great and the incentives don't exist. So I think the three identified spaces are absolutely things that we could have a consultant consider and say, here's your best opportunity to do what you want to do. So I'm in complete support with seeking out counsel and consultants to help us navigate the evaluation and the taxation part, because we don't have those answers, and we need them before we say, draw the maps.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Alderman McClatchy.
Thank you. A lot of concerns here. First of all, we got a TIF district now going to add 3 more. My big concern is, I guess, protecting the taxpayers and the schools. So what I'd like to see is go to an advisory referendum on this.
Okay.
And let the taxpayers decide.
Has that ever been done?
Why not?
No. Just asking a question.
The only advisory referendum that we have done here that I'm aware of was we asked for the recreation center. Back in like 2002, we did an advisory referendum and asked, what's your opinion? Would you like to see a rec center or not? That's the only advisory referendum that I'm aware of from the city's point of view.
Okay.
Alderman Miller.
I think a TIF district is a complicated concept that most people have no idea how it works, how it functions, and what impact it makes on them. If we were to do, and this is my humble opinion, an advisory referendum, there would have to be a boatload of education and presentations in preparation for that, because if I were to walk down the street, and I'll give this to Alderwoman Bassey to do, and ask 100 people if they understood TIF districting, what would you guess 100 responses would say to you?
Do you want the truth?
Yeah.
Maybe 3.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And that's not to be disrespectful to our community, but it is a very, very complicated process.
Yeah. So not to be, you know, that person who says advisory referendums aren't functional. I think they have a purpose, but in this kind of a purpose, I don't see that would give us the input that we need.
Alderman Bassey.
I just want to state also that there is legislation that is being considered in Springfield to make TIFs on referendums, so that it's not passed, but that is in discussion right now.
Alderman Glenn?
Yeah, just one other point that I'd like to bring out, and that's the fact that I was here when they created the first TIF district that we have now. And there was a lot of discussion at that time of what we were creating a TIF district for. It was to rejuvenate the buildings that were there downtown at that time. And we were going to find $9 million worth of grant money to build a Riverwalk. No, we never got first nickel. And we've used money from the TIF to build the Riverwalk. We've had donations from some very generous residents throughout the city that donated, to the foundation that helped build part of the Riverwalk. So the point I'm making is if we create a TIF today with certain ideas of what we want to see with it, doesn't mean that down the road, a different council doesn't decide to do something different with that money. So, I just wonder if we have other avenues we can go to as far as incentives than doing a TIF. Are there grant monies out there? Something. I just hate to, in a way, TIFs almost take and hide it from the taxpayers that they're paying it with their property taxes. I mean, it's not a big hit, you know, on a line on a property tax, but it does go, and it does affect their property taxes, and they should know that. And it'd be nice if we could find something else. Like I said, we had the utility taxes and all that, and I felt that was better than just going up with the levy because of the fact that at least people can control what their uses are when you have a use tax. So, just something I wanted to bring up, just food for thought. Thanks.
Any other questions, comments, council? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I'm total in agreement as far as doing something with Main Street. That definitely needs some help, and whatever we can do, grant money, to help that, I think that's what we should focus on.
So grants aren't 100%. So when grants happen, and Russ can probably speak to this more than me, but, you know, there's usually a 80-20, 50-50, 70-30, 60-40 is usually the 60-40. Yeah, I mean, so we'll be talking about something else that, you know, just because it's grants doesn't mean it's free money. You know, so
you still have to have the match.
You got to have a match of some sort, which we don't have, especially with the kind of money that's going to take to rebuild some of these.
I guess what I'm getting at is that's one area I'd really like to see us focus on, however we get the money or whatever.
So hearing some of the council members here, can I get the majority of council to move forward to bringing someone in that's not staff or myself pushing the TIF, okay, because that's not what we're doing here. We want to provide data and provide factual information to the council to bring someone in to share the EAV throughout the city, how it works. That way it's not coming, once again, from us. It's coming from someone that specializes in it before we move forward even further than that. Can I get the majority support to at least bring that forward? And then the council can decide whether to move forward after that or not. Can I, Alderman Santee, yes?
Are you asking us about bringing a consultant on board or just a consultant demonstration?
Demonstration, come in, share everything that you all have to ask this person. Maybe there's, may we do,
and do you want it? Okay.
Regarding this?
And do you want this to, do you want this consultant to have all three of these areas? You know,
general
discussion,
yep.
all three.
All three. Just to kind of give his insight, her insight, whoever that is.
Okay.
I think it's just important. Not that, you know, not that we're saying all these sites need to be included, but I think it's important for them to give their insight on what their thoughts are. And maybe we can, you know, drive this person around the city prior just so they kind of understand, you know, just, you know, maybe Suzanne and I can just take this person around and just so they understand the city itself if they're not from around here. I don't know. I think that'd be a better option to at least give the council more feedback from someone that's not city staff or myself. Alderman Bassey.
Do you have someone in mind?
Nope. Suzanne might.
Your honesty.
But
well, so the council may recall we did something similar to this, just in a general kind of TIF discussion with our consultant that we were working with as a result of some of that downtown development that we were looking at, 1111 North Green. So we have SB Friedman on speed dial, and so, you know, potentially we could reach out to them There are other consultants out there that do this work, though, and so, we could discuss that as staff to see kind of who else we know. We have looked a little bit. Doug did some legwork for us, just looking at what companies were out there. So just in the thought that there could potentially be an RFP at some point in the future for a consultant to really do a deep dive on these things. This concept with a kind of overview is a little bit new, but it's certainly something that we could look at as staff, and we do have those contacts.
And I just threw this out there just so that way we all can get on the same page before making a decision that's larger. That's just...
Yeah.
Friedman gave us an overview. Everybody remembers.
Just on the
that,
one
right?
site, 11.
I understand it, but they educated everybody here on it. They answered Andy's question specifically because it was brought up then by, I think it was you who brought it up.
Yeah.
They had a PowerPoint ready to go. It's just you need a refresher on it because it's not right out of a book. It's not like made up.
Yeah.
Well, but I think the mayor's point, I don't mean to speak for him, but just to get, I guess, a high-level view of what our, what our areas actually look like without going into a great amount of depth, right? Because as I talked about, there will be someone in the future, if we decide to move forward with this, if the council wants to do that would have to do a deep dive on each and every one of the parcels before they could be potentially included in a TIF district. But to call up, our Jeff from SB Friedman and say, hey, here's kind of what we're thinking. Can you come in and just, do a quick presentation reminder for the city council, talk a little bit more in detail with more expertise about what the process looks like, how much this could potentially cost, because we don't have a sense right now. At least I don't personally have a sense right now of if we did contract with a consultant to do this reporting for us, what that would even look like from a dollars and cents perspective. So, maybe we should have some of those more exploratory conversations now, to the mayor's point, to be able to provide the council with, a little bit more data to be able to make an educated decision on how to move forward.
You have someone specifically here answering your questions as well. So I just think that's the right move with do a committee of whole versus a council meeting that way. It's on a specific day that works for everybody. But I think that's the right move before we move further. I think it's too important just to make a decision to say no or yes at this point. But I do think it's too important for a lot of these properties, on all these areas, to be honest with you. I mean, of course, there's sites that are just open land, but I think if you talk to a lot of these developers, but mostly these property owners, I got letters of support from many of them because they know how important it is to get these sites developed and what they can do to develop them. So I don't want to rush into this, but I also want to make sure that we provide the correct information to the council before making a decision. So if I can get a support from council to do that, we'll bring in someone from SB Friedman or, Doug can do some research and see who we can bring out that can help us through this, the next steps of these discussions.
I would be comfortable with a presentation. I did want to ask Director Martin a couple of quick questions. You're the one that's taking these phone calls and talking about empty buildings, pieces, parcels of land, trying to mix and match here. I mean, if you can give me an idea or give us a percentage here, when you're in discussion, are they, how many times out of 10 discussions does TIF come up with these developers? Or just people looking at a building?
10.
10 out, I mean, real, I just,
yeah.
10 out of 10.
I mean, ICSC.
Okay, one more thing, excuse me, one more thing though. And this is, I mean, the art of just having having this discussion with people like, your developers. Who's bringing up the subject? Who brings up the question with TIF in it? You or the developer?
Oh, it's always, I don't bring it up.
Thank you.
That's always a developer.
Okay. Okay, but look, it's like it's important that we understand that, and I think it's important that we understand that that's what our director's doing for us. And so, it's my opinion now that, how many options do we have out there? 1 and 0? I mean, in regards to getting some people to at least sit down at the table and talk to us in regards to, well, it's not in a TIF district, oh, thanks, but no thanks, see you later, AKA the hotel that went into Woodstock. But, that's what I'm driving at, is just that, that's my perception here is that's what's happening. And, look, I don't make up the rules, but we're following some rules. We're following some procedures that are happening in the last few years, and it sounds like, we're following the one access, one road that, could get us some movement on these different parcels in the near future, because correct me if I'm wrong, I just don't see the other avenues like a grant or we're going to do 50-50 with people because we have enough money in our general funds. I just don't see the other options.
I agree with you. I don't see, if there's another option, I don't see what it is.
Even when we go to ICSC, we actually have Direct Design do some maps and do some designs. Sean Strack was with us one of these years, and we did maps ahead of time, and the questions that came up was, is this in a TIF? Is this in a TIF? I mean, it's the number one thing that every developer, even at CSC, asks, and if it's not, it's kind of a dead deal, or we got to come up with some other options, which we have. I mean, we've come up with options to fill the vacant storefronts, over at where Treehouse just went and stuff like that, and the council supported that incentive. But once again, that incentive was a significant amount as well, which we don't want to continue to do nonstop. So.
I was just going to say, sales tax rebate is the most common thing out there. Property tax abatement is difficult because we don't have a large portion of the property tax bill, and you need support from other taxing bodies. We tried to do that with the vacant building incentive program. It just doesn't have a lot of teeth to it.
And I'm confident that the taxing bodies would support the TIF that would be proposed to them. I do think that they look at this as an opportunity for the community to grow, but also expand, to get new development and get new buildings and make it a community that people want to live in. You start waiting 10 more years by the Angelo's building in that center. I mean, Angelo's has been struggling since COVID, right? So, I mean, and they've decreased their rent, and the owner of that property has taken hundreds of thousands of dollar hit, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of a hit there, but the general public does not know that. But it's important that we do something with these sites. Otherwise, once Angelo goes vacant, then what? And we're going to be back at the situation, well, what are we going to do? And then we're going to be too far behind the 8 ball on it. So.
I'll add to that, just having gone through the extension process and sitting in front of each of those boards, they're more apt to support because you have been excellent stewards of the existing TIF that we have and how we've utilized it and the success that we've had with it. And so I think, our track record is what can set us apart to some extent. They certainly have some confidence that in us in doing so, or they wouldn't have even engaged the notion of us extending the existing TIF that we have. So that was, I think it's a feather in our cap that you as a council have done a nice job. Our councils over the course of the TIF have done a nice job in executing what a TIF is intended to do.
And also, Senator Wilcox actually gave us props for how we've used the TIF and how we've funded different projects, and not just spending money to spend money. And
he's not necessarily an advocate of TIFs.
No, he is not. So, but yeah. So with that all being said, can I get support to at least do a committee of the whole and bring someone in that will provide some insight on TIFs? Any questions that you may have, I would ask that you send them to us ahead of time. That way we could kind of help, versus everything going at him and him not having everything and or something, and then we're just pushing the I don't even know what I was going to say, but anyway. So if you could just get me those questions, I think that would be important to get to that individual ahead of time. And of course, if you have other questions, you can ask them, but I think it would just help the meeting flow a little bit better.
But when are you going to talk about making a presentation or having somebody make a presentation? I mean, what are we a month away from, a new council? I mean, almost 5 weeks.
I think it's important that, hopefully everyone that's running for council or mayor is here. So, hopefully they'll have input and they'll be at that meeting as well, to learn what's going on. The decision probably will not definitely be made until after that, but I still think it's important, to get the ball rolling and get people, we shouldn't stop city business because there's an election. That's my only thing.
I understand that. It's just the fact that, if you have a different council, which you will because Alderman Santee isn't running again, thinking can be just that little bit different. And so, you don't want this council to take and commit for the next council is what I'm getting.
Well, and I'd hope that the council members and that are in the audience and so forth, they would engage into that conversation as well. There's no reason why they can't engage into that conversation during the committee of the whole, just to understand, or maybe they have questions too. But once again, that vote wouldn't come until after the election in general anyway.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, there's a series of votes that the city council would have to make, and there's going to be a lot of conversations around anything before it would move forward,
So, do I have support? Go ahead, Alderwoman Bassey.
What are we looking at cost for a consultant to come in?
I don't have those numbers, but I would imagine it's somewhere south of $5,000. Yeah, well within my spending authority to do that, so the council wouldn't have to approve anything additional from that.
Definitely south.
Definitely south.
Not north.
Not north of 5,000. No, because again, I don't remember how much we paid Jeff Dickinson the last time, a couple $1,000s potentially.
If I recall, it was like $1,500.
Yeah.
It's just for a couple hours of time.
Right. Yeah, this will be slightly more in depth, just because we do want to sit down and have a conversation with them about how this went. What our thoughts are as staff, those types of things, so that they're informed. But yeah, I can't imagine that it's going to be more than a few $1,000s.
Before you hire anyone, can you send us what the last presentation was, so at least we can review it and it might bring some questions?
Got it. Yeah.
All right, Alderman Santee.
Yes, and if we can all follow Alderwoman Bassey's lead here and review this information and get it back to our staff so that they can pass it on to this person who's doing a presentation. And please understand, I understand asking the question about the cost. There's always, we all want to know the cost. This is a person that's coming to us to pitch us and pitch the city and pitch the council and whoever's here in the seats later on. So they want to come back a second and third time. So they're going to work with us as long as we deliver them information and deliver them information in a appropriate time frame so they can respond to our questions and appropriately and hopefully get all the answers, because we find ourselves kind of getting like a half answer from time to time, and I don't want to put words in the other elected officials' mouth, but it's frustrating. And I think on both ends of the side here that we need to do our due diligence to make sure they can they get the appropriate information from us, so then they can submit that to us. Thank you.
Alderman Davis.
I think there's value in bringing somebody in. Obviously, nobody knows, or at least from my impression, nobody knows TIFs that well. So to bring an expert in, get their opinion, it gives us the opportunity to ask the questions that we need to ask. I think there's value in that. If we can say, here's the proposed areas, and they can give, an opinion, obviously without the deep dives, I think, again, there's value in that. Could educate everyone, so doesn't sound like the cost is that expensive up front, so it's worth the value.
Thank you. Alderman Cook.
Yeah, I would like more information.
Okay.
So the more educated we are, the better our decisions can be, and I'm all for it. Okay.
All right. Alderman Miller, you're good with that?
I am good with that.
Alderman Bazey?
I just have some real general questions.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is not on whether or not I'm for it or not. Real simple questions that I didn't have an opportunity to ask. The Kmart building, you said that it would be $4 million to sell it. Who owns that land? Does Sears own part of the land? And
No, BET Investments.
they own all the land?
They own half the property. They own the land on which the old Kmart sits.
And then there's another landowner?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I should say, then there's the McDonald's and then the other outlot. They're separate owners as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you for that. And I do understand Walmart has got really strict restrictions on who can and cannot use that land. One other question that I have, and maybe this is something that will have to be discussed at the, if we agree that we're going to have another meeting on it, are national chains ever allowed to be included in a TIF? Because based on what we're looking at in the map, we've got Panera, Popeyes, Starbucks. Can national chains be included?
Nothing I've read said they can't.
Right.
Okay, I would have issues with national chains being included in that.
And once again, some of those properties that just redeveloped might not even be in it, right? I mean, they might not even qualify, but probably, like Panera. My guess is they, I wouldn't think, I mean, but maybe they, I don't know.
Not every property has to qualify.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
But they have to connect.
Right.
So, but once again, that those properties does not have to be in the TIP because we can get the strip mall to connect. We don't need those new buildings.
Okay.
But also, if you do want a larger franchise, I mean, you know, usually the franchises aren't looking for the incentives as much as the developers or mixed use, to be honest. Well, at least we haven't had that question by, right, restaurants. I mean, so.
Right, and at the end of the day, the city council has the ultimate say on how the money is spent. So if you put a national chain in, and like McDonald's has done in the past, they tear down their own decrepit building and build a brand new building, you're gaining into that tip because that EAV, you know, is going to go up. So having it in there, I understand not wanting to give money to a national chain, but there are benefits to having them in there.
So, Alderman Bassey, where do you stand on having someone come in?
Well, I think there are other options other than TIFs. I think Main Street definitely needs a great deal of attention. I'd like to see an expanded facade grant for them. I'm not comfortable having national chains included in the TIF. I don't even think some of this area is blighted. So I do have my reservations for bringing someone in.
So is that a no?
That's a...
Can I just get a no then?
Fair question.
All right, so we'll go no, I guess, on that. Alderman McClatchy?
Yeah, I'd be for it as long as we really get the word out and we get the public involved with this.
Yep.
You know, I'd still like to see it go to referendum, but if we're going to have this meeting, let's really get people involved.
We'll come up with a plan for marketing it and so forth as well. Alderman Gleb?
Yeah, let's get somebody in here so that there's no questions asked or unanswered.
Okay. And Alderman Santee? Good. All right.
I'll be good with it too, so it's unanimous, but it must be under $5,000.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll do some research. Staff will do some research on it. We'll send out an email on what we come up with, and then I would ask that council members start coming up with some questions and, you know, getting that to myself and Suzanne, you know, copied on the same email, so that way we can go ahead and get these questions to this representative, so that way speed up the process a little bit, knowing what you all have questions about. So.
Yeah, and I would add too, based on our struggles to schedule a committee of the whole related to development, we will try to make this a discussion item or committee of the whole on the same night during the same time frame as the regular city council meeting. So
yep.
We'll let you know when that will be.
All right. So thank you for that. Moving on, staff reports. Suzanne. Yeah, just falls in your court at this point.
All right. So the City Council will note that I just passed out something related to the Riverside Drive streetscape improvements. So we've talked about this a little bit. We put together a couple of quick slides here. This is something that had just came up this week, and so we didn't have time to put information together for the council, but it's something that we need to discuss as soon as we can. So the city did a streetscape master plan that was completed back in 2021, and that included renderings and plans to do streetscaping, which includes pedestrian enhancements, new lighting, those types of things, on the three primary drags through our downtowns. And this conversation right now is specific to Riverside Drive, but we do have also plans for Green Street and for Main Street as well, kind of in our back pocket from that effort. The council contracted back then with Christopher Burke for engineering services. The amount of that, we didn't have the exact amount handy, but it was around $200,000. And Christopher Burke has executed on most of that work. The Riverside Drive streetscape is currently sits at about 80 to 90% engineered. As we talked about previously, the city went out for grant funding from the state. It's here, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, DCEO, the Rebuild Downtowns and Main Streets grant. We applied for a grant of $2 million. So we got the good news late last week that we won a grant. But the bad news is the grant is only for $771,000 of the $2 million that the city had applied for. So now we're in an interesting scenario where we have to decide, the city council has to decide whether or not to accept these monies, the $771,000. It's a lot of money. My personal philosophy is never reject a grant. Never say no to free money if you can figure out a way to not say no to free money. And so we needed to have this conversation as soon as possible with the city council. They sent us an email. We talked to Greg Ruin, the city's engineer. They need an answer by the end of the month. And so, there's no requirement right now for a resolution or anything from the city council one way or the other, but they do need to hear back from the mayor via email over the next couple of weeks. Based on the conversations that I've had with Greg, the engineer, we're not sure if we pass up this grant funding, if there will ever be another opportunity to have grant funding for this work. The DCEO grants, again, they came from Rebuild Downtowns and Main Streets. It's, those infrastructure grants that came out a few years ago, and so they're kind of winding down a little bit, number one. And number two, if you get selected for a grant and you say no thank you, I don't know how that plays next time you apply for a grant. The reason that we're getting this opportunity is because that we're getting the 771 instead of the $2 million because the points-based system, and we apparently tied with two other projects for this grant funding. So in any case, we need to have the conversation with City Council so you can understand what this could potentially look like, what the implications are, so that we can get a read from Council as to how to respond to the state. Well, all right. So let's talk a little bit about what this project could potentially look like. It's both sides of Riverside Drive. I misspoke on that to the chief earlier, but it is both sides of Riverside Drive on either side of Elm Street, so 120 through the middle. It involves converting Riverside to a one-way street, enhancing the appearance of the downtown areas all the way from the tiny shops all the way up to Pearl Street. For those of you who have walked on Riverside Drive, you know that there are a lot of ADA accessibility issues and other things. This project would address all of those issues and also make it a very lovely place to work and shop and play. Brick crosswalks, the sidewalks would be pavers, new curbs and drainage. You can see in the picture that I handed out to the City Council, pedestrian bump outs, landscaping, benches, trees. It would make it extremely walkable. and that's just on the surface. The project also includes a lot of underground work, including replacement of all the lead service lines that currently exist on Riverside Drive, new sewers, those types of things. So it's a significant project, which comes with a significant cost, right? So the reason that the city applied for $2 million in funding is because the best estimate that we have right now for construction costs for this project is about $3.4 million, and that doesn't include the engineering. So the total project cost, we're estimating right now at about $3.6 million. These numbers have been refreshed since 2021, when this was initially proposed. They have, of course, increased, but we touched base with Christopher Burke Engineering ahead of the grant application. So we think that these numbers are pretty good, right? So after that grant award of $771,000, that still would leave the city on the hook for about $2.8 million to complete this project. It's a lot of money, and it's certainly above my pay grade to make this decision, and so that's why we're having this conversation with you all today. We're talking a little bit just as staff about potential ways that the City Council could consider financing this work if that is of interest. Again, I hate to give back grant money, but the city's costs here would be pretty significant. And so this area is located in the downtown TIF. Obviously, we've talked a lot about TIFs this evening. You've seen the project list that has been completed in the TIF. Most of that work has not taken place up until this point on Riverside Drive, so they would be getting a little bit of their share of this funding. We do have options. As we've talked about a little bit, the TIF bond for the Riverwalk Phase 1 was actually retired this past fiscal year. In 2024, we made our last annual debt service payment on that. So that's another $220,000 that's unallocated in the TIF on an annual basis. We have our NICOR tax that Alderman Glab has referenced earlier this evening. That brings in about $355,000 right now on an annual basis. Right now, we do not have any projects that have been assigned for those monies. Obviously, those taxes were put in place that predates me, and so I don't know if the council has specific things in mind for that NICOR money, but that is an option if the council was interested in assigning that to get this work done. The other thing that we had talked about previously, when we were talking about downtown development, was the concept of a food and beverage tax. If I recall correctly, that was around $900,000 to $1 million that could potentially be new income. I had Carolyn run just a very, very quick back of the envelope calculation. We think that if the city council wanted to move forward with doing some type of a bond, that bond payment could potentially be around $260,000 a year. For 20 years, right. And keeping in mind, of course, that Riverside Drive is the first of at least 3 of these potential streetscape projects. And so, I don't want to minimize the impact that this could potentially have, when you look at doing all 3 of those. At some point, there may be a development on Green Street that there could be some ability to factor a streetscape into some future development there, but there's the future is very uncertain, as I keep saying. So that is sort of the quick math. As I mentioned, we have to decide quickly whether or not to accept the funds. So that's by the end of the month. One of the things that DCO has kind of telegraphed to us is that they understand, they're giving us this opportunity. Ordinarily, they would just make a grand announcement and award funding to everybody, right? Because the mayor has already signed the thing when we submitted the grant application that essentially said, if you give us $2 million, we'll find the money for the rest of it, right? Somehow. But they know $770,000 doesn't have that same impact, right? And so when they run into a situation like this, number one, they give the communities every opportunity to say no, thank you, because we just can't do it, right? But also extended timelines are acceptable. So this is something that ordinarily, and I don't know what the timeline was on the proposed grant program, but ordinarily you'd have to complete the project within a year to 2 years, something like that. DCO has communicated to us that they would have the flexibility to extend that timeline for the city to give us a little bit of time to figure out how to fund it, where this money's coming from, et cetera. So the best guess from Greg Gruen, our engineer, was that if we submitted a letter that said we'd complete the work before the end of 2028, that DCEO would potentially be amenable to that concept. So again, I just think it's important for the city council to weigh in on this and let the staff know and let the mayor know, your level of comfort with moving forward.
And also something I did ask Suzanne earlier today, and I don't know if we got answers on that, but like if one of the three or one of the two others do not take that DCO money, I'm wondering if we could, once again, take half of that and the other half goes to the other municipalities.
Yeah.
So
we don't have
other
the answers to
conversations
that,
that, but that would be great if that's the case, because there might be another municipality that says, hey, we can't do it.
Right.
And maybe we're at that point too. I don't know. That's the council's decision, but that hopefully would come into play if that's the case.
One thing I do want to point out is that, we're very focused on maintaining a positive relationship with DCEO. I'm not saying there couldn't potentially be grant funding in the future, right? Again, nobody has a crystal ball, but I think, it's not a great, I guess we've got two scenarios here, right? There's one scenario where we say, three scenarios. One scenario say, yes, we'll take it, we'll figure it out. There's another scenario where we say, no, thank you, we can't do it at this time, and they can go one of two ways with that, right? They can say, well, forget McHenry, they're not going to work, they're not going to play in our sandbox, or they can say next year when we apply for this program or a similar program, we feel bad that McHenry couldn't do this, and so therefore, they'll give us some extra points. We have no idea what that could potentially look like. I think the worst case scenario is the city saying, yes, we will accept this money, and then getting a little bit down the line and realizing that we can't figure out how to pay for it and having to back out. So we don't want to be in that scenario either, certainly. So I just want to kind of point that out.
So, Alderman Bassey, go ahead.
Can you get us a copy of the application with all the requirements?
I can.
Thank you.
It's got a lot of attachments and they're very large, so I was trying to figure out how to get it to you, but I'll see what I can do.
Would it be easier if we all picked them up? Paper? What's the easiest for you?
Let me think about it. I'll make sure that you get it.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Davis?
You already said my second question. If one of the other ones don't accept, do they divvy that back up? The other one is, what's the criteria about the usage of those funds? Is there, you have to use it within 5 years, you have to use it within 2 years? How does that work?
I don't know the answer for this specific grant, but what I can tell you is that the grant funding, this is my understanding based on what Greg, our engineer, said to me earlier, when we've received funding from DCEO for projects in the past, they have been very flexible with us. There was a project you referenced where we won some grant funding for a particular use back in 2020. And those on council may understand this better than I, but we were allowed to repurpose the funding that they gave us for a different project. So I think Ross has an ad here.
Yeah, I can jump on it. So back in 2004, we were awarded money for Huntersville to add sewers to the Huntersville subdivision. The remaining balance of that was to be paid through an SSA. However, the residents there decided that they didn't want to pay into an SSA, so we had to essentially give the money back. But what they allowed us to do is reallocate it to pave Miller Boat launch this past year. So that you're talking 20 years later that we were able to use that money for the boat launch. So I mean, I'm not exactly sure how all that works, but I'm sure that we can get some answers for it. But that's where that money.
Yeah, Greg also referenced demolition on the sewer plant. So I don't know if that was a separate project or the same.
Oh, that was another one that we got. I believe that was a separate DECO grant that funded that, though. Right. I don't think that was part of the Hunterville.
Right.
So we'll try to get those answered.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Direction. Alderman Miller.
So I think grant money is difficult terrain, and we've been considered with two other communities. I think we need to find a way to accept and utilize the money, because it's not free money, but it's grant money, and I think it gives us an opportunity to reduce our cost for projects that we know we can't afford in totality right now. So I think we need to find a way to utilize it, and if there is flexibility, there may be flexibility to the scope of the project, given that our ask was $2 million and we only got $700,000.
Mm-hmm.
So if we knew the project was $4 million, we asked for $2 million, they only gave us $7 million, maybe we rescale the project to $1.5 million. So if they're giving us $7 million, we need to create $7 million. We've identified $4 million. We really only need to find $300,000, which is much more palatable than finding $3 million.
So we talked about that today a little bit, whether the scope of work would be, able to be changed. And I don't know if you got an answer.
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer to that question specifically, but I can say that DCEO approved our grant application based on the project as it was presented, right? And it was a competitive grant, and so there are others who lost out because we were awarded this money. And so whether or not they have flexibility to allow kind of a recalibration of your project similar to what you're referencing, I don't know. On the flip side, Greg says they've been very flexible in the past, so I guess anything's possible. So we can certainly ask those questions.
Maybe there's an opportunity to ask them if we can get it done by 2030 or something along those lines, and the TIF will be still generating some other cash, and potentially have some other funding sources as well that Suzanne brought up as, other options. But we won't know that until we really go into depth with DCEO. At least some direction by City Council on what their thoughts are on, if we get it as the 771 today, and the proposal that we have to finish it by 2028, who's in support of finding the money, Carolyn, moving along with the project. I mean, that's really what we need to figure out. And then from there, hopefully there's some positives that come out of the conversation saying, yes, we will take this, but we would like to see if we can extend it, or we would like to see if we can change the scope of work, So I think we just need to go into it with, no, we're not interested, in my opinion, that we can't just fund it right now, or we have to go in it as, yes, we'll take it, but can we put some stipulations on it? So I guess, go ahead.
I was surprised today by some of the emails that came through in support of the TIF districts and the reconfiguration of Main Street, turning Main Street into a one-way from 31 to Crystal Lake Blacktop. And the proposal on Riverside does the same thing as we turn north off of Elm Street. So I was frankly surprised, but I think we probably would have the same support from those property owners down there in the desire to do traffic control and feeder control. So I think I could certainly support us trying to find the money. Riverside Drive has been ignored for a long time, and with the completion of the Riverwalk on the riverside, the water side looks really good, and now the sidewalks look really crappy. So we need to give all of our downtown areas a little love, and this is an opportunity to give Riverside Drive a little love.
Okay. Alderman Cook? Sorry to call you out, but...
Go for it.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to give up grant money.
Okay.
Before you take more consents, you should know that, I don't know how far you're going to, assuming you're going to direct the staff to go forward and the mayor to go forward, these grant applications, or these grant awards, when they're signed, have significant default provisions. So if you're going to represent to the DCEO that you're going to accept this grant and comply with it and fund the rest of it, we need to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay it back. There'll be penalties. So just know that.
Thank you. Alderman Davis?
Yeah, I would like to know a little bit more about it to see if we do have that flexibility, so if we get those answered. But, I mean, absolutely, I mean, if we can utilize this money for this or another. But, I mean, if we don't think it's feasible to get that money within whatever that time frame is we need to find out what that is. Because again, if it's next year, then the answer is no. I mean, we're just probably not going to be able to make it happen.
Yeah, unless you do a bond. I mean, the bond would be the best, probably the best option, to be honest with you. Low interest.
That's what we do.
Not that I'm a bond fan at all, really.
Yeah. That's more my concern is, what does that scope look like? Date-wise, timelines and stuff.
Okay. Alderman Bassi?
I agree. I need to see what the grant looks like, what are the restrictions, and as we learn that there are significant penalties if we use the money. So I'm not really prepared to say go forward until I have an opportunity to read everything.
Okay. Alderman McClatchy?
Yeah, I'm for it. If there's a will, there's a way. We'll make it work. So.
Alderman Glab?
More than anything else, I just worry about getting in too deep. I think if we can downscale the project, they'll accept the downscaled project. I'd say, yeah, go for it. But I think if we've got to do what we proposed, unless our administrator come up with a miracle in the next couple of days, I'd say we might have to just walk on it. You hate to walk away from money, but it's not exactly free money because we got to spend money to get
Well, it's going to have to, I mean, we paid to have it designed and engineered. I mean,
right.
This is a plan to get it done, so.
I know. So, and of course, we could always reapply for it the following year or whatever when we're ready, but, so like I say, if nothing else, just, if we could walk cautiously on that.
Alderman Santee?
Explore your options, but ticket.
Okay. So what we'll do is Suzanne will reach out, or Greg will reach out, get some of these answers, and then get an email out to all of you with those answers as soon as possible. And then what I would do is I'll call on one to continue to make sure that you are comfortable moving forward. As of right now, there's a majority of moving forward. But once again, let's get these answers, and then I'll call each of them individually to get your take on it before signing it or saying no. Agreed? Is that good?
Yeah, 10 days.
10 days.
Tick-tock.
So Suzanne's on it tomorrow. But yeah, so, okay?
So by 8:30 in the morning,
you'll have an email. All right. Well, thank you for that. Any other staff reports? Ross, go ahead.
So I misspoke on that grant money. We had an IDNR grant that we paved the boat launch with. The money for the Huntersville subdivision was used in 2021 to demo the central wastewater treatment plant site. So I just wanted to clarify that. The only other thing that I have is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. there's a Landmark Commission meeting. Mr. Bard is here tonight, but he will be here tomorrow with a group of people to discuss with the Landmark Commission the future of Landmark School. So if that meeting is at 7 p.m. tomorrow night, just so you're aware. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other staff reports? Russ, go ahead.
Just real quick, Public Works crews are working a water main break on Riverside Drive north of Washington Street. So if you haven't heard, you might want to over the area for the evening.
Jeez. All right, well, thank you.
Just so we're clear, is this one of the water mains that would be replaced if the TIF project moves forward? Yeah, if the streetscape project moves forward?
No.
Wrong answer.
All right, mayor's report. All I have is Rise Up will be announcing McHenry Music Festival. We'll be announcing the headliners for Friday and Saturday night, along with their tours. We'll be announcing so Monday, we will be announcing the headliners. So just FYI. Other than that, I have nothing else. City Council comments, Alderman Santee.
Just a note to thank Director Adams. His communication with me in regards to snow removal. I appreciate everything. You know, wasn't all good, but we got things resolved, and I just thank him for communicating with me and getting back and forth on those snow removal issues. Thanks.
Any other? Mike Cook, go ahead.
I'm going to give Mr. Adams there an attaboy for, all right, Ross. The streets looked really good after the snows and everything else like that. I haven't seen the streets look that good in years. And I don't know what you did, but it was pretty damn good, I'm telling you. I got a lot of compliments on that.
I stayed out of it.
Oh, no wonder they look
He
good.
dispatched. Any other city council comments? All right, perfect. All right, at this time, we're going to be going into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee, 5 ILCS 122C1. I would ask the general public to please leave the room. We will not be, hopefully, going to any action items after this, so it'll be a quick in and out for executive session. Thank you all for coming. A motion.
Yes.
Alderman Sansi, second. Oh, hold on. We got to ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
No, it's fine. Alderman Sansi for a motion. Second by Alderman Davis. No, you're fine.
Yes.
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 Yes.